Meanwhile, a valley southeast of the Death Taker's stronghold. A middle-aged man wearing leather armor, a longbow slung over his shoulder, and a dagger at his waist, quickly entered the dark valley. Passing the sentry post, he stood in front of a cave and whispered, "Lord, is there any new news?" A woman's voice came from inside the cave. The voice was crisp, indicating the woman was not old. "Lord, just as night fell, those guys' stronghold was attacked by undead, and it's in complete chaos," the middle-aged man reported softly. "Undead? Where did so many undead come from in this place?" The woman's tone was full of surprise. It wasn't that she doubted her subordinate's words. It's just that her territory was originally in this area, but she had never heard of or seen any undead appearing. She had only heard others mention the word undead in the channel. "Lord, your subordinate saw it with his own eyes. Those skeletons didn't know where they came from, and they attacked the stronghold like madmen. I guess those guys did something outrageous that angered the undead," the middle-aged man continued to answer. "Oh, was the stronghold destroyed? Is Li Jinhu dead?" The woman was very receptive. Her tone immediately became somewhat gloating. "There are a lot of undead. I'm afraid they will fight to the death and suffer heavy losses on both sides. Your subordinate did not see Li Jinhu, so I don't know if he is dead or not." The man answered the woman's questions one by one. Tap, tap, tap. Footsteps sounded. From the depths of the dim cave, a small figure walked out. Standing in front of the cave, she pondered for a moment and said, "Notify the brothers, attack with me tomorrow morning, take the Death Taker's stronghold, and kill those damned beasts." "Yes, Lord," the middle-aged man replied in a low voice, walking towards one side of the valley. The woman walked out of the cave and put her fingers in her mouth and whistled. Instantly, roars of beasts echoed through the surrounding mountains and forests. As if responding to the woman, the moonlight reflected her delicate features. She gritted her teeth and said, "Li Jinhu, this time I will skin you alive." The next morning, the sky was just beginning to brighten. The once bustling Death Taker's stronghold was deathly silent. On the open space in front of the main stronghold, hundreds of surrendered bandits knelt on the ground in unison, not daring to raise their heads. Surrounding them were circles and circles of undead, staring at the people in the middle like statues. And these once murderous and fierce bandits were more like docile rabbits, kneeling here quietly, not daring to make the slightest movement all night. Thousands of people in the stronghold had been killed, leaving only this many. They didn't know how long they would have to kneel, but they could only kneel like this. Noon. A team of people approached the stronghold from the main road to the north. Originally, they thought it would be a tough battle. Before leaving, the mercenaries handed over their written wills to their companions who had stayed in the city due to injuries. But all the way to the stronghold, it was a deathly silence. The walls were covered with arrows, and blood flowed down the walls, not yet dry. One could imagine that a fierce battle had taken place here a few hours ago. However, despite such a fierce battle inside and outside the walls, not a single corpse could be seen. It was as if this was a ghost town. It was this city that was flowing with blood. The surroundings were filled with an eerie atmosphere. Fang Hao and his subordinates felt okay, knowing that this was Spencer's doing after the occupation, cleaning up the battlefield as required. But the faces of the Lysian city guards and mercenary groups were a little unnatural. Each of them had an unusually solemn expression, vigilantly looking around. "Lord, madam, I'm afraid there is danger here. Why not send someone to investigate first?" A mercenary captain quickly approached and said. Another captain echoed, "Yes, since we are here, it is better to be careful." Several captains suggested reconnaissance. If the large team charged in like this, there might be unknown dangers. Fang Hao thought about it, and it wouldn't hurt to take a few more minutes. He said in a low voice, "Scouts, go and see what's going on in this stronghold." "Yes, Lord." The team was already under the city, and in front of them was a small stronghold. Several scouts took orders, and while being vigilant, walked in through the open gate. Before long, the scout walked back with a strange expression. He reported, "Lord, it's an empty city. There are signs of fierce fighting inside, but there is no one there. It's empty. How is this possible?" A captain exclaimed. Fang Hao seemed more calm. He ordered softly, The Lysian city guards and the 4 mercenary groups go to the 4 small strongholds to search for spoils, and the rest of you follow me to the main stronghold in the middle." "Yes." Everyone responded, and the people from the 4 mercenary groups were assigned and began to head to the 4 small strongholds. The Lysian city guards were mixed in with the mercenary groups, acting as supervisors. Of course, there were no spoils in these small strongholds. The good things were all plundered by the 3 bandit leaders and taken to the main stronghold. The reason for this arrangement was also to find something for these people to do, so that they would not approach the central area. Everyone took their orders and left, and Fang Hao led his men to the main stronghold in the middle. As soon as he approached, he saw the undead soldiers standing guard on the stronghold. Everything went smoothly. The team entered the stronghold, and the Lionheart Knights and heavy sword infantry took over the work of the undead. They began to stand guard. "Lord, the stronghold has been captured. 772 bandits have been captured, and it has been confirmed that 2 of them are Tyrant and Gluttonous Wolf," Spencer reported softly, closely following Fang Hao's footsteps. "Oh, what about that Li Jinhu?" Fang Hao asked. Compared to these 2 natives who were originally bandits, Fang Hao was more concerned about Li Jinhu, who fished and harmed traversers. This person's scheming and ruthlessness, if he doesn't die, will eventually be a trouble. Li Jinhu is not among the captives, and there are no corpses with similar features. It is possible that he was not in the stronghold at the time, or he may have escaped during the battle, Spencer reported in a calm tone. Fang Hao came to the middle hall and sat down in the chair. He touched the armrests of the chair with both hands. He said softly, "Anjia, take people to search the stronghold and collect all valuable things. Dimika, you take over the city defense. Astai, lead the cavalry to scout the surrounding area. Spencer, have people bring Tyrant and Gluttonous Wolf over." "Yes." The heroes took their orders and left the room. Before long, Spencer walked in with 2 people. It could be seen that the 2 were very strong, but their faces were a little pale at this time. After the 2 came in, their eyes vigilantly scanned the surroundings. When they saw the young man above, their brows furrowed together. With their thinking, they couldn't understand at all what the young man above had to do with the undead who attacked the stronghold last night. "Lord, the people have been brought," Spencer said softly. Fang Hao nodded and looked down at the 2 of them. "I heard that you have done a lot of bad things. Did you think there would be such a day?" Fang Hao looked directly at the 2 of them. Tyrant and Gluttonous Wolf frowned and looked at the young man above. The 2 of them could be sure that this was a traverser. "This lord, I don't know what to call you. We have no intention of being your enemy." Tyrant licked his dry lips and said loudly. They knew that their survival depended entirely on the person before them. Being tough was not a wise decision if they wanted to live. "My name is Fang Hao. You ambushed me a few days ago," Fang Hao said calmly. "Fang Hao." The 2 were stunned again. Immediately afterward, their expressions instantly shifted from bewilderment to surprise. They had heard this name before. Li Jinhu had previously mentioned that a transmigrator named Fang Hao was greatly connected to Lexus City. At the time, they didn't take it seriously. Now they saw that the most terrifying person wasn't Rebecca, but this seemingly harmless transmigrator in front of them. Seeing their expressions, Fang Hao was taken aback. "What? Have you 2 heard of me?" No. The 2 hurriedly shook their heads. "All right, I'll ask you. Where's Li Jinhu? Where did he go?" Fang Hao continued to ask. The 2 looked at each other. Greedy Wolf answered, "Li Jinhu is not in the stronghold. He went to Jinmastu. Lying is not a wise decision. At a time like this, he still dares to leave." Fang Hao's tone immediately turned cold. Greedy Wolf's body trembled, and he quickly explained, "I didn't lie to you. We were afraid of Lexus City's encirclement and suppression, so we had Li Jinhu take the money to Jinmastu to buy a way out. So he's not in the city." "Went to Jinmastu? What a coincidence. How many days has he been gone? And who did he go to buy a way out from?" Fang Hao continued to press. Greedy Wolf replied, "Li Jinhu said he had connections to contact the city lord of Jinmastu and get us legitimate identities, so Rebecca would have no reason to send troops." "How much money did he take?" "Most of the money. He took all the money the stronghold had saved up over the years," Greedy Wolf said. Fang Hao looked at the 2 somewhat strangely. With Li Jinhu's methods and ruthlessness, he most likely took the money and ran. He might have bought himself an identity in Jinmastu, or he might have just run away. But it was basically certain that he wouldn't be coming back. Putting Li Jinhu's matter aside for now, Fang Hao continued to ask, "Why did you attack Lexus City's forces?" The two averted their eyes. After hesitating for a moment, they said, "We mistook the team. We mistakenly thought it was an ordinary merchant caravan, so we attacked the wrong people." Humph. Fang Hao snorted coldly, reminding them, "Oh, what you're saying doesn't quite match what I know. I heard that you were monitoring the movements of Lexus City's army half a month ago. Who told you to capture Rebecca? Don't rush to answer. You only have one chance to answer. If you get it wrong, your life will be over. Think carefully before you speak." The expressions of the two changed again. They knew that if they were caught again, their lives would probably be in danger. Sweat appeared on the foreheads of the two, dripping onto the carpet. Greedy Wolf gritted his teeth and said, "A steward from the Marshall family found us and told us to capture Rebecca." The Marshall family? Fang Hao carefully recalled and found information about the Marshall family in his memory. Grote Marshall, after arriving in Lexus City, knowing that Rebecca's husband had died, he wanted Rebecca to marry him. Later, he was kicked unconscious by a CD halfway through speaking. It seemed that this whole matter had something to do with him. What benefits did the Marshall family promise? Fang Hao continued to ask. A new identity and a city recognized by the Federation, Tyrant added. This Marshall family really knew how to use their senator's power. They could whitewash the identities of bandits and turn them into identities recognized by the Federation. From bandit leaders, they would directly become city lords. Now that he knew what he wanted to know, there was nothing more to say to them. Take them down. Soldiers were about to take the two down, but Tyrant suddenly struggled and shouted loudly, "Sir, what happened a few days ago was our fault. We are willing to compensate and make up for our mistakes." Greedy Wolf also hurriedly chimed in. Yes, we are willing to compensate." Fang Hao asked, "What can you give me?" "Money, how about it?" "All the money in the warehouse is yours," Tyrant said directly. "Killing you, that money is still mine. You're taking my money to give to me. Isn't that a bit insincere?" Fang Hao retorted. This. The two's tone instantly paused, and they knelt there blankly. Their money, and it was already his? Is there anything else you can offer? Fang Hao continued to ask. The two thought about it, and Tyrant said, "Sir, we can rob, and all the money we rob back will be yours." Good fellow, they really had ideas. Fang Hao was too lazy to waste words with them and waved his hand, signaling for them to be taken away. The two were dragged away, and Tyrant's shouts were still echoing. "There are also people. Slaves can be sold for a lot of money. We can help you catch them." The voice grew farther and farther away, gradually disappearing. The hall fell silent again. Fang Hao then brought up the prompt that appeared in the Lord's book. The architectural style of this stronghold was very similar to the territory style of transmigrators. But when he sat on the throne in the middle, a system prompt still appeared. The spoiler stronghold has become your subsidiary city. You can rename the city here and control all resources of the stronghold and its affiliated villages. The appearance of this prompt meant that this place belonged to a native city, and not a city of transmigrators. Fang Hao thought about it and didn't have a good name, so he would just call it that for now. When he wanted to change the name, it would be time to change it. Despoiler Stronghold. City level, level 5 native city. Attributes: combat power plus 5%, extra plunder plus 2%. Description: a city with attributes can bring various benefits and accelerate the construction and development of the city. A level 5 city, but the attributes were too weak. What was this? It didn't have any gathering and production attribute bonuses, and it didn't even have a tax bonus. It only had an extra plunder, which fit the style of bandits. Unlocked blueprint. Bandit camp building blueprint. Bandit camp, greenstone 800, wood 1200, hemp rope 500, animal skin 50. Description: can recruit vagrants and bandits into battle-hardened bandits. A blueprint for recruiting bandits. It could convert vagrants into bandits, thereby increasing the combat power of the stronghold. But for someone of Fang Hao's strength, this blueprint was basically useless. Population was also a very important resource, who would easily convert them into bandits. Just as he finished reading, the door was pushed open with a bang, and Jia strode in, thinking she had come back from looting. But he heard Jia standing at the door, shouting, "Fang Hao, come out for a moment. We found many women and children in the dungeon." Women and children? Fang Hao frowned and quickly walked out. Take me to see. Take me to see. This way, Anya said, turning her head and walking to the side. A group of people followed behind them and arrived at the west side of the mountain stronghold. At this time, several soldiers were already standing there, guarding. Open it, Anya said. The soldier bent down and flipped open the wooden board covering the ground, revealing a dark tunnel. Anya didn't stop and walked straight down. Fang Hao followed behind and went down together. As soon as they entered, a cold, damp, and foul smell of decay filled the air. They could even hear the squeaking sounds of rodents. The only thing missing was the sound of humans that Anya mentioned. The stairs going down were not long. After 5 or 6 steps, they had already reached the bottom. Just as they came down, Fang Hao's brows furrowed again. The sunlight shining in from the entrance made it slightly bright here. Below, wooden fences separated individual cages. Inside the cages, women in tattered clothes and covered in mud were imprisoned. They were like frightened animals, huddled in the corners, their backs to the outside, trembling uncontrollably. At the edge of the cages, a wooden trough that looked like a manger could be seen. Inside were some blackened foods with a strange odor. Fang Hao's expression instantly turned ugly. But he didn't say anything and continued to follow Anya inside. Besides women, he also saw children, not old, who were also huddled together, their little faces covered in mud and full of fear. Since coming to this world, Fang Hao had already witnessed its cruelty. But seeing the scene here still made him feel as if a weight was pressing on his chest, a breath he couldn't exhale. Suddenly, Fang Hao's gaze fell upon several women huddled together. Their eyes occasionally glanced over, a mixture of fear and evasiveness. It was as if they were huddled there to block the view of Fang Hao and the others. Disperse, Fang Hao said softly. The expressions of the women huddled together were uniform, the fear in their eyes intensified, but they only instinctively stepped back 2 steps and immediately moved their feet back. This made Fang Hao even more certain that they were hiding something. Pull them apart. Several heavy sword infantrymen pulled the women who were huddled together to the side. The people blocking the view dispersed. Fang Hao saw a woman lying on the ground, her hair as rough as straw, her face ashen. A transmigrator. Her clothes were open, revealing her somewhat shriveled breasts, feeding the baby in her arms. Obviously, her situation was not optimistic. One hand unconsciously patted the child in her arms, her eyes lacking much spirit. At this rate, she probably wouldn't live much longer. Please, please let her go. She just gave birth. Let her go. For a moment, pleas for mercy came from the cellar. Along with the cages where the children were held, a burst of crying also came. Fang Hao slowly exhaled and walked towards the woman on the ground. The pleas for mercy from the side turned into curses, all sorts of vicious words, cursing these uninvited guests who had suddenly appeared. Fang Hao squatted down, letting the woman lean against him. He opened a bottle of healing potion and poured it into the woman's mouth. Cough, cough. The violent coughing brought some spirit back to the woman's eyes. She looked at Fang Hao, but didn't speak. I am Fang Hao, it's all right now. Li Jinhu and the others have been defeated by me. You and the child are safe. Fang Hao said softly. The woman didn't speak, but her hand still patted the child in her arms. She didn't know if she had heard Fang Hao's words. At this time, the dungeon had quieted down, and everyone had also realized that this guy and the bandits were not on the same side. Everyone looked at Fang Hao, and a spark suddenly appeared in their originally numb eyes. A spark as if they had seen light. Go, take some people to register everyone, ask for their village names, and after registering, take everyone out and prepare to eat. Fang Hao instructed softly. Okay, Anya replied. Anya didn't know many characters, but the recruited troops all had a certain foundation. Among their racial characteristics, there was learning. Doing some registration work was completely feasible. After Fang Hao finished speaking, he carried the black-haired woman and the child out together. He had someone arrange a room for them. Outside the mountain stronghold, Fang Hao built a hidden troop cave. He had Spencer arrange all the undead soldiers into the hidden troop cave. As for Spencer himself, he put on a full body armor. Unless there were people from the Church of Light, from the outside, it was impossible to see the appearance of an undead. After all, he still had flesh all over his body, unlike a skeleton which was so obvious. Thump, thump, thump. At this moment, a personal guard rode up. He said loudly, "Lord City Lord, the madam is asking about your next plan." The guards of Lysa's city all referred to Fang Hao as the city lord and Rebecca as the madam. Fang Hao said, "Rest here for the night and continue the journey tomorrow." "Yes, Lord City Lord," the personal guard replied and turned to leave. Soon, inside the mountain stronghold, a series of enticing aromas wafted out. It was the smell of meat porridge with many ingredients added, making the aroma much richer. It permeated throughout the mountain stronghold. Not far away, Anya, who was in charge of registration, had also finished. She led a group of women and children out of the dungeon. But when the dazzling sunlight appeared overhead, everyone seemed a little dazed. Some were even unaccustomed to it. They cautiously followed behind Anya. When they saw the bandits kneeling in a large area not far away, their faces instantly changed, and they were so frightened that they wanted to run back into the dungeon. It was clear that the bandits' brutality had left them with psychological trauma. After repeated explanations from Anya and the soldiers, the women and children finally calmed down and lined up to receive porridge and eat. After receiving the food, these people found a place to squat down, regardless of the mud on their hands, and scooped the porridge into their mouths. It seemed they were starving. Anya walked over. There are 242 women, all young, and 75 children aged 3 to 10. They were all captured by the bandits from various places and hadn't been sold yet. In this world, people reached marriageable age at 12 or 13. So, they matured relatively early. Why are they all women and children? Where are the men? Fang Hao asked curiously. They say that the men who were unwilling to join the bandits were either killed or sold off as laborers and weren't kept, Anya explained. Indeed, compared to women and children, men were imprisoned for a long time and posed a certain risk. These bandits probably feared trouble and sold the men off as quickly as possible. Understood. Fang Hao nodded to show he understood. How do you plan to deal with these people? Anya continued to ask. In fact, these were also things that troubled Fang Hao. These people were all women and children and couldn't travel far with the team. No, let Ma Hong take people to pick them up and take them to his territory. In short, there are always more solutions than difficulties, Fang Hao said. That works too. Taking them back to our place is also fine. It will be more lively with more people. Anya glanced at the people who were eating ravenously. Our place, ordinary people can't accept it. Fang Hao directly rejected this idea. Undead all over the mountains and fields were not something ordinary people could accept. When Anya first arrived in the city, she was completely freaked out. Several bunny maids were scared unconscious, let alone these people. Seeing that the people who had been released had almost finished eating, Fang Hao also knew it was his turn to appear. He hoped that after these people stabilized, they could provide him with some faith power. Fang Hao walked to the front of the people and stood on a chair. Seeing that the ground was still noisy, he gave Anya a look. The latter looked back and blinked, her face full of questions. Fang Hao was helpless and whispered to Spencer beside him, "Tell them to be quiet." Spencer nodded and shouted loudly, "Everyone quiet." Below, the Great Lord, who defeated the life-taking bandits and rescued you, Lord Fang Hao, has something to say. Everyone quiet down. His voice was very loud and instantly drowned out all other sounds. The entire place instantly fell silent, and everyone looked up in unison at the young man standing on the chair. Cough, cough. Let me introduce myself. My name is Fang Hao. I come from the north of Lysa's city. I heard that there was a group of bandits here who plundered villages and towns, killed many innocent people, and treated simple villagers like goods to be sold. As he spoke, sobbing suddenly broke out below. This sound was like a contagion, one after another, all lowering their heads and wiping away tears. These women who had been kept until now were not very old. When the bandits' actions were mentioned, they began to sob. Seeing that everyone's mood was a bit low, Fang Hao continued, "Now you are safe and free. I can give you a choice. If you have relatives or a village still existing, I will give you some food to go home. If you truly have no relatives left, you can come to my territory. There are no bandits there, and you can live a normal life." Everyone looked at Fang Hao, and no one spoke. After a long silence, a girl finally stepped forward and said softly, "Are you the city lord? If we go, what do we need to do? Will you make us do hard labor and beat us every day?" Fang Hao still had some impression of this girl. When they were in the dungeon just now, she was the one who cursed him the loudest and dirtiest. "I am not the city lord, I am the lord. My territory has many cities, such as Lysis City, Pearl City, and many others. You will have your own jobs, but not hard labor. Just like when you were in your own villages, you also need to do some things to support yourselves." Fang Hao replied seriously. "Then will you beat us?" "Why would I beat you? Will you make mistakes?" Fang Hao countered. The girl immediately shook her head. "I won't make mistakes." "Haha, you can choose who you like to marry, and you can choose the job you like. No one will force you to do anything," Fang Hao continued. Having said this, the girl proactively reached out her hand and said loudly, "I will go to your territory. I hope you keep your word." Fang Hao nodded. "I'll go too." "Me too." One after another, they all raised their small hands, indicating their willingness to follow Fang Hao to his territory. Those children who were not very old, although they were listening to the conversation here. Their attention, however, was still on the food in their hands. While eating, they listened to Fang Hao's words, as if listening to a stand-up comedy while eating. Fang Hao stood on the chair and looked down. All the women had raised their hands, and not a single person was willing to leave. To put it bluntly, whether they were women or children, their villages were gone, and they were all that was left. Relying on themselves, they had no ability to survive this winter. They would either freeze or starve to death, or sell themselves to the noble lords in the city. It was better to follow Fang Hao. No matter how bad it was, it wouldn't be worse than it was now. "Okay, let's rest here tonight. Everyone can move freely, but don't go outside the city to avoid any danger from escaping bandits," Fang Hao said loudly, stepping down from the chair. Upon hearing the word bandits, everyone's faces instantly changed. They each found a shady spot to chat, but not a single person was willing to leave the main gate. Although the people had been appeased, how to settle them, however, became something Fang Hao needed to consider. According to his and Rebecca's plan, they would set off immediately tomorrow. At that time, they would need to assign a group of people to escort these women back, or have Manhwa come to pick them up. Which method was better, he still needed to think about it himself. Just as Fang Hao was weighing which one was more secure, the bronze bell on the mountain stronghold city wall suddenly let out a loud sound. At the same time, the guards shouted, "A large group of wild beasts is approaching. Prepare for battle." Clatter, clatter. Inside the city, all the soldiers took action. They ascended the city wall. Wooden stakes were pulled up at the city gate, blocking the broken gate. Fang Hao led Anya and Spencer up the city wall. Looking into the distance, they saw a swarm of wild beasts approaching. Leading the way was a large, furry golden lion. And behind the lion, they could also see wild bears, wolves, deer, and even wild boars with tusks. There were nearly 100 of them, like a migrating herd, rushing towards them quickly. Further behind the beast horde, there were also dozens of people dressed as militia. They were hastily following behind the beast horde, also approaching this direction. "Are these people driving the beast horde?" Fang Hao said with a frown. At the same time, Anya suddenly exclaimed, "Look, there's a person on that golden lion." Upon closer inspection, they could vaguely see a figure on the back of the golden lion. Just then, this person stuck their head out from the lion's thick golden mane, revealing a small face and a braid floating in the air behind her head, constantly swinging. She could control the beast horde. This was Fang Hao's second thought. As the beast horde got closer, the people on the city wall could hear the roars of the wild beasts and the heavy panting sounds. "Force the beast horde to stop. If they don't stop, attack directly," Fang Hao said. As soon as the words fell, a soldier beside him raised his hand and fired a shot. A gunshot rang out, and the bullet hit the ground in front of the golden lion. The woman on the lion's back was clearly stunned when she heard the gunshot. She looked up at the top of the city wall, and when she saw the dark muzzles of the guns, her face instantly filled with fear. She immediately pulled the lion's mane. "Stop! Stop quickly! They have guns!" The golden lion was very obedient and immediately stopped in its tracks. But the wild beasts behind it were still running at full speed. In an instant, the fierce beast horde was thrown into disarray, rolling around in a messy heap. What was originally a powerful momentum now had a touch of humor. The petite woman also climbed up from the ground in a disheveled state. She got back on the lion's back, confirmed the gun muzzles above again, turned her head, and said, "Retreat! Retreat quickly!" The militia who were following behind the beast horde had just arrived here. Before they could even see the situation clearly, they heard their lord ordering a retreat. A group of wild beasts also turned around and started running back. And just then, a dense sound of hooves came from the side. A golden-armored general, leading fully armed golden-armored cavalry, rushed over quickly. They directly blocked the path of the beast horde's retreat. "Damn it! I'm going to capsize in a ditch today." The retreating group was intercepted by a squad of cavalry. Leading them was an orange hero, accompanied by a well-equipped cavalry unit. This caused the woman on the lion's back to look quite grim. She cursed the heavens for being unfair, wondering how a beast like Li Jinhu managed to recruit an orange hero. Just as she was thinking about how to fight her way out, nearly 400 or 500 infantrymen wielding greatswords rushed out from the city gates behind her. They quickly surrounded them in the middle. This made her expression even more tense. She secretly regretted her hesitation, fearing they would all be wiped out here today. Just as she was feeling vexed, the greatsword infantry stepped aside to open another path. A young man, leading several heroes, walked through the crowd. He stepped to the front. The woman's eyes widened, surprised to see several more high-level heroes behind the young man. "Is this guy from a hero wholesale market? Who are you? Where are Li Jinhu and the others?" The woman on the lion's back spoke first. She had just scanned the entire field with her gaze. The bandits she knew, including Tyrant and Greedy Wolf, were not here. Moreover, these people didn't look like bandits. If bandits could have this kind of equipment, they would have attacked the nearby major cities long ago. While the woman on the lion's back questioned him, Fang Hao was also sizing her up. She had a small frame, lying on the lion's back. The lion's golden fur could almost hide her. Her skin was somewhat dark, she had large eyes, and her appearance was quite pretty, giving off an underage feeling. Her hair was in a braid at the back of her head, and she wore a black tank top that revealed her slender waist. "Shouldn't you explain your purpose first? After all, it would make things safer for you and your subordinates," Fang Hao said softly, looking directly at her. This woman seemed to have a special ability. Being able to command nearly 100 fierce beasts to act with her was quite a rare thing. The woman looked at the tense atmosphere around her and guessed the identities of these people. There was a high possibility they really weren't bandits. She gave a cold snort and said, "This young lady came with troops to suppress the bandits." "Suppressing bandits? With just these beasts and nearly 50-plus militia? One should know that previously, the number of bandits here was over 3,000. Her group of less than 200, which were all beasts, couldn't possibly lay siege to a city. How could she suppress bandits? "All right, who are you people?" the woman asked back. Fang Hao replied directly, "If what you say is true, then our goals are the same. It's just that I arrived a bit earlier than you and have already captured this place." "You captured it? When?" This morning, I suppose." The woman turned her head and looked at her scout hero. The latter nodded to her. Thinking carefully, it made sense. Last night, this place was attacked by the undead. It seems this kid got lucky. The undead retreated at dawn, and he took over the city as soon as he arrived. "Where is Li Jinhu?" the woman continued to ask. "Why? Are you looking for him? Is he alive? He captured my friend, and I want him back." Her tone was filled with anger. "Li Jinhu escaped, but their first and second in command are still alive. You can ask them," Fang Hao replied. The woman's eyes darted around, and she whispered a few words with her hero. She puffed out her small chest and said, "Then take me to see them." Fang Hao nodded and said, Have your people wait outside the city while you come in with me. Fine. The whole group of people and horses returned to the stronghold. The beasts and militia rested on a piece of open ground outside the city. It seemed these beasts only listened to the woman. The other militia members stayed far away from them. Humans and beasts were divided into two areas. The wooden chevaux de frise were pulled aside. The woman followed behind Fang Hao and the others and entered the city under the guard of several soldiers. At this time, the woman became even more curious about the origins of Fang Hao and the others. She hadn't heard of any transmigrators with this kind of strength nearby. As expected, true masters keep a low profile. This man is probably much more powerful than the Fang Hao in the channel. After all, she had already seen several orange heroes. The woman stared at Fang Hao, while Jia, on the side, was staring at her. Hey, little dark skin, are those beasts all your pets? The woman was taken aback and looked at the beast-eared woman speaking to her. A blue hero. You're the little dark skin. Look at your own skin. How can you have the nerve to say that to me? And Jia said indignantly, you're definitely darker. Mine is wheat-colored. You're darker, okay? Loli, you say which of us is darker. And Jia looked at Loli, who was watching the show from the side. The latter's big eyes rolled around. She pointed at the strange woman. She's dark. And Jia's is wheat-colored. I've heard the Lord say so before. Damn, are you two ganging up on me? The woman was a bit frantic. They walked all the way into the city. They saw women and children squatting in the shade, eating and chatting. They walked to an open space in the southeast corner. Several soldiers were guarding a pile of iron cages. Many people were imprisoned in the iron cages. The woman recognized at a glance that several of them were the original bandits. When they attacked her territory, these guys were present. Soon, she discovered Tyrant and Greedy Wolf, who were imprisoned separately. Seeing the two of them, anger flared up in her eyes. She drew the iron sword from her waist and stabbed it through the gaps in the iron cage toward Tyrant's chest. Tyrant's face changed, and his body lunged backward. However, the space in the iron cage was limited to begin with. After taking 2 steps back, he hit the back of the iron cage. Being a bandit by trade, seeing no way out, he did a donkey roll and barely dodged the sword. Just as she wanted to strike a second time, Fang Hao stopped her and said, "Aren't you here to find someone?" The woman glared fiercely at Tyrant, but ultimately put away her sword. She looked directly at the two in the cage and asked coldly, "Where is Chun Ming?" Tyrant and Greedy Wolf were scared out of their wits. Yet they didn't dare to get angry, their voices suppressed with suppressed fury. Who's Chun Ming? A transmigrator named Chun Ming. He's a doctor. After being tricked here by Li Jinhu. Where is he? How should we know? Li Jinhu was in charge of those things. In short, the men were either sold or killed. The women are all locked in the dungeon. Go find them yourself, Tyrant replied. Killed. This old lady will kill you. Saying so, she stabbed toward them again. The faces of the two changed again. Wait. He was probably sold. As long as transmigrators have some special skills, they can be sold for a good price. He's not dead, not dead. Hearing that he wasn't dead, the woman's expression softened a lot. But she didn't really intend to stab these two to death. After all, they weren't her captives. She asked where he was sold and about some other people she knew. After gaining nothing, she followed Fang Hao back to the city lord's mansion. Inside the city lord's mansion, soldiers brought out fruit tea and some fruit. By the way, my name is Lan Yang. How should I address you, master? Thank you. Otherwise, who knows how many more people these guys would have killed? Lan Yang said softly after taking a sip of tea. Oh, my name is Fang Hao. Uffed. The tea she had just taken into her mouth was sprayed out entirely. Lan Yang didn't even have time to wipe the tea from her mouth as she stared fixedly at Fang Hao, as if confirming whether he was lying to her. You're Fang Hao. What's wrong? Is there a problem? Fang Hao asked curiously. Holy crap, is it really you? Master Fang Hao, aren't you near Lisa's city? How did you end up over here? Lan Yang said in surprise. Something came up. I was just passing by. Master, look at what you're saying. You just passed by and wiped out this mountain stronghold. We really have been living in vain. Lan Yang chuckled and wiped her mouth. By the way, is that Dr. Chin your boyfriend? Was he also tricked here by Li Jinhu? Fang Hao continued to ask. What boyfriend? Uncle Chun is over 50. As they chatted, Lan Yang also talked about some of the nearby conditions. The nearby villages had basically all been ransacked by these bandits. The Chun Ming she was looking for was a doctor and was quite famous in the channel. He could rely on his medical knowledge to exchange for some resources. Once when she was injured, Dr. Chun had helped her. Later, she heard that Dr. Chun had gone to join Li Junhu's alliance, and after that, there was no more news. Later on, the strength of the Duoming's mountain stronghold grew by leaps and bounds, and Li Junhu stopped tricking people into coming. He basically just led people to steamroll everything. Her territory was also destroyed during an attack by the bandits. She had escaped with her people and had been hiding in a valley ever since. From time to time, she would come out to cause some trouble for these guys. However, without a territory and barracks, she couldn't recruit troops, and the number of people in her hands was becoming fewer and fewer. Sooner or later, the day would come when her personnel were exhausted. So, upon hearing there was a chance to take over the bandit stronghold, she had brought her people here. Unfortunately, the place had been taken by Fang Hao, and she herself had almost been finished off by bullets. Now that things were clear, the two of them were no longer wary of each other. By the way, how do you get those beasts to listen? Fang Hao asked about what he was curious about. Getting those beasts to listen was not simple, especially so many beasts. Oh, I'm a beast tamer, but my level is still too low. I can only train these beasts with low intelligence. Lan Yang didn't hide anything and spoke while drinking tea. Actually, there were no fixed professions here. For example, since Fang Hao's main method of attack was spells, he could call himself a mage. Since Lan Yang had beast taming skills, she called herself a beast tamer. But this beast taming ability was indeed quite good. Even if they were just beasts, they possessed very strong combat power. Ordinary militia would need several people to surround and kill a single wild bear, let alone over 100 beasts. I see, you're quite impressive. Hee, not as impressive as you, with so many high-level heroes. Lan Yang chuckled, very happy with Fang Hao's praise. Your ability hasn't been fully utilized yet. In the future, maybe you'll be able to tame even higher-level beasts. Yes, I think so too. When I'm capable enough, I'll tame a flock of dragons and see who dares to bully me then. As if he had spoken to her heart's desire, the volume of her voice suddenly increased several times. Then, she felt she was getting a bit too ahead of herself. She added another sentence. It's a wish, just a wish, it's still far off. Fang Hao smiled slightly, finding this little girl quite interesting. After thinking for a bit, he continued to ask, what are your plans next? Your city is gone. You can't just keep hiding in the valley with your people forever. This question was also something Lan Yang had been troubled by. Previously they were out for revenge, but now that these bandits were wiped out, staying in the valley didn't make much sense anymore. She had also considered where she should go after leaving. Either find a city with good public security to live in, or go join a truly reliable transmigrator alliance. Alliance? Thinking of an alliance, Lan Yang's eyes turned back to Fang Hao. Why am I looking for an alliance? Isn't there a giant thigh right in front of me? Clinging to him would be better than joining anyone else. Her big eyes rolled around as she said, Ahem. Master Fang Hao, I heard you have quite a few people under you too. Take me in as well. I promise I definitely won't hold you back, and I'm especially smart. I can definitely help you out. Good grief, who praises their own intelligence like that? Fang Hao thought for a bit and said, All right, then this city is yours. There are some women and children who were released outside the gate. Take care of them, otherwise they'll have a hard time surviving this winter. Okay, as long as there's a city, food won't be a problem, Lan Yang promised confidently. Next, Fang Hao devoured Lan Yang's Lord's Book. Devour successful. Your Lord's Book is currently level 6. Progress to next level, 8/20. After devouring it, the required experience went from 7/20 to 8/20. Fang Hao performed a conversion on this city. The attributes of this city were originally ridiculously poor, so it was a good time to refresh them. Light enveloped the city. Immediately, the native city was converted into a level 5 transmigrators affiliated city, and he appointed Lan Yang as the governor of this city. A city lord's book was handed to Lan Yang, who accepted it joyfully. She said, Master Fang Hao, You are now my lord. Please give your instructions. Uh, she didn't seem as smart as she claimed to be. Go bring your people in and get them settled. Control those pets of yours, and then talk to those women who were released. They're quite pitiful too. Take good care of them and the children. You don't need to worry about food and winter clothing. I'll arrange them for you when the time comes, Fang Hao said after some thought. It could be seen that Lan Yang was a very loyal person. She was already in a wretched state herself, yet she still thought about avenging Dr. Chun. Handing those women and children over to her was somewhat reassuring. As for food and warm clothing, Fang Hao was not lacking in those. Okay, I'll go right now. Lan Yang stood up and walked out. After thinking for a moment, Fang Hao added, and Jia, you go with her. And Jia stood up and accompanied her out. Seeing Jia get up, Loli also followed them out. Little dark skin, that lion of yours looks quite fierce. I have a giant lizard too. Do you want to see whose is faster? And Jia said provocatively, are you children? You even want to compete over this? Lan Yang gave the two of them a look. And Jia, she's just scared, Loli said from the side. I think so too. That lion of hers doesn't look like it runs fast at all. You two are talking nonsense. Let's race right now. The loser has to eat poop. The 1.3-meter Loli, the 1.5-plus-meter Lan Yang, and the nearly 1.7-meter Jia. The three of them walked out side by side, looking like a Wi-Fi signal icon. Finally, the problem of those women and children was solved. With Lan Yang becoming the city lord here, having these people stay was the best method at the moment. Otherwise, he would have to split his forces to escort these women. The long journey alone would be enough to make them suffer. With the matter resolved, Fang Hao's gaze fell once again on the gold and silver jewelry and a golden treasure chest that had been looted. Most of the money in the stronghold had been taken away by Li Jinhu. What remained were only 3 chests of jewelry and gold coins. Fang Hao didn't bother counting the number of gold coins. Instead, he went straight to the treasure chest. He opened it directly. Obtained, Marauder Carriage Crafting Blueprint, green. Bandit Ghost Head Saber Crafting Blueprint, blue. Bandit Belt Crafting Blueprint, green. Warfire Coin X202. He took a cursory look at the attributes of the 3 blueprints. For his current self, they weren't of much use. The Marauder Carriage had a large load capacity. Its biggest feature was how much it could hold. But its travel speed and performance were inferior to the Dwarven Carriage. The latter two, the Bandit Ghost Head Saber and the Bandit Belt, also had nothing special about them. His troops couldn't use them. They could only be considered an expansion of his blueprint collection. Time slowly passed. Dusk arrived soon. Other than mediating in Jia and Lan Yang's bet in the middle and having them change to a different form of punishment, nothing else special happened. After dinner, the spoils of war looted from the 4 border strongholds were also brought over. Those mercenaries would definitely pocket some for themselves, but it wasn't a big problem. The valuable items were all here at the main stronghold. At most, they would take some gold coins. It could be considered a reward for their battles over the past few days. As he categorized all the spoils, he discovered some interesting things. Account book. Day 62. Sold 172 slaves. Received 500 gold. Day 75. Sold 362 slaves. Received 1220 gold. Day 81. Sold 121 male slaves. 62 female slaves. Received 850 gold. Zhang Xiaoming's design. Received 800 gold. Day 92. Jamasitu. Purchased 3 cannons. Spent 5,800 gold. Day 125. Sold Dr. Chen Ming. Received 3,000 gold. The old ledger had been left on top of a box. Since it was written in Chinese characters, the soldiers who were searching couldn't understand what was written on it. They didn't pay much attention to it. It was only when Fang Hao rummaged through things that he discovered this ledger. It could be confirmed that the ledger was kept by Li Jinhu. He didn't expect this guy to be quite meticulous, using Chinese characters to keep the accounts. Others couldn't understand it, but he knew exactly how much money was in the mountain stronghold. Among them, the number of slaves sold had exceeded 1,000, and there were also more than 20 transmigrators whose names and professions were recorded. From the records, it could be seen that even ordinary transmigrators fetched a considerable price. Those with special skills, like the Dr. Chen Ming, had a price that directly reached 3,000. Based on the price of slaves, it was simply an exorbitant price. Li Jinghu had really found a way to get rich. He closed the ledger and put it into the demonic space. Maybe it would be useful in the future. The sky grew darker. Outside the window, the chirping of insects could be heard. Lying on the bed, he opened the book of the Lord and read the chat channel for a while. Suddenly, footsteps came from outside the door. He thought it was Jiao returning, but instead, it was a soldier's voice. Lord, the woman holding the baby is awake and says she wants to see you. Oh, okay, call Jiao back. I'll be right there, Fang Hao said. Not long after, Jiao returned with Luo Li running behind her. Fang Hao took the two of them and, accompanied by soldiers, went to the room where the woman was resting. Pushing open the door, he saw the woman leaning against the wall, coaxing the child in her arms. On the table to one side, there was an empty bowl. The meat congee inside had been finished. Seeing Fang Hao and the other two enter, the woman's still pale face managed a grateful smile. Fang Hao, thank you. When she wasn't fully conscious, Fang Hao had told her his name. Moreover, he had also told his identity to the women who had been released. He hadn't restricted their freedom, so they must have told her Fang Hao's identity when they came to see her. I still don't know what your name is, Fang Hao smiled, sitting down with Jiao beside him. It could be seen that the woman was very delicate looking. If she hadn't suffered such things, she would have been a beauty in her daily life. Oh, my name is He Yue. What's going on with this child? Where is his father? Fang Hao continued to ask. Counting from the moment of transmigration, it had been roughly 5 months. This meant He Yue was pregnant when she was transported here. It wasn't easy for her to have survived until now. I don't know. Maybe he's alive, maybe he's dead. Who knows? He Yue's tone was somewhat calm. Perhaps, after 5 months had passed, she had already come to terms with it. Right? How did you end up here? Fang Hao continued to ask. Li Jinghu, that utterly despicable man. I brought my people to join his alliance, but after we arrived, he immediately separated us and locked us up. Speaking of this, He Yue gritted her teeth. It could be seen that He Yue was usually a relatively quiet woman, even with her eyes full of anger. She only managed to curse him as utterly despicable. Unlike Lan Yang, who could greet someone's entire family the moment she opened her mouth. Perhaps sensing her mother's anger, the baby in her arms, who had been neither crying nor fussing, suddenly began to wail. He Yue immediately started to comfort him. Without any hesitation, she pulled down the clothing on her shoulder and began to breastfeed the child. Li Jinghu ran away. But don't worry, I will make sure he is punished. He Yue patted the child, her eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, Lord Fang Hao. All right, I plan to leave this place to Lan Yang. She was originally a transmigrator from nearby. You can live here. Although her personality is a bit wild, she is still very reliable. Fang Hao briefly introduced the situation here. Is it the girl riding a lion? Fang Hao was taken aback. You know her? No, I don't know her, but I often heard the mountain bandits guarding the gate mention her. A girl riding a lion, always coming to cause trouble and do some damage, He Yue said with a smile. Yes, that's her. Oh, she is indeed a reliable person. If I had been as brave as her back then, I wouldn't have ended up in this situation today, He Yue rocked the child. Let what's past be past. You must live well from now on, for yourself and for your child. Fang Hao continued to comfort her. Yes, you are right. He Yue looked down at the child in her arms, her eyes full of tenderness. Perhaps, back in the dungeon, it was the child that allowed her to endure and survive. This world is very cruel. People always need something to hold on to. The room fell silent for a while. Fang Hao also didn't know what else to say, so he planned to leave. All right, your body hasn't recovered yet. Get some rest early. Just as he stood up. At this moment, He Yue spoke again. Lord Fang Hao. Yes? Is there anything else? He Yue hesitated, looked at the child, and her eyes became more determined. She immediately said, Lord Fang Hao, can I go with you? I am a senior accountant. Your territory must have a place where I am needed. I don't want to stay here anymore. Senior accountant. This should also be considered a special profession. No wonder Li Jinghu threw her out, even in her physical condition at the time. If she could survive, she could be sold for a good price. But Fang Hao hesitated and said, "He, my territory is a bit special. You should have heard people mention it in the channel. I am connected to the undead. I'm afraid you won't be able to accept it." "Lord, I've already died once. What else is there to be afraid of? Please take me with you. I don't want my child to live in this kind of environment. I beg you." After speaking, she propped herself up, about to kneel before Fang Hao. Actually, Fang Hao had also been considering recruiting talents recently. He didn't immediately agree to He because he was afraid she wouldn't adapt to his territory. Now that her tone was so firm and she was mentally prepared, Fang Hao had nothing more to say. He supported her and said, "All right then, you rest for one night, and I will send you to the territory tomorrow." "Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord." He thanked him, starting to sob. Okay, don't cry. If people outside here, they'll think I bullied you. Rest now and take care of your body." "Okay, thank you." Fang Hao left the room and returned to his own accommodation. The next morning, when the sky was just starting to brighten, the entire mountain stronghold was already bustling. Today was the day to continue their journey. Early in the morning, the soldiers got up to cook and prepare for departure. Troop concealment cave. Several torches were lit, illuminating the dark underground stone cave. When the dense, neatly arranged skeleton soldiers appeared before their eyes, Lan Yang's mouth widened, and she stumbled, almost falling down. Her eyes were also filled with surprise and fear. She finally knew where the undead that the scouts saw attacking the mountain stronghold came from. At the time, she was still wondering where so many undead had come from. It turned out they were all created by Fang Hao. "I need to take the bone dragon and the skeleton mantis men with me later. At that time, there will be less than 10,000 skeleton soldiers left here to help you defend the city," Fang Hao quietly explained. There were at least 5,000 or 6,000 of these undead remaining. They could only be left to Lan Yang to assist her in defending the city. Fang Hao was talking beside her, but he didn't get a response from Lan Yang. He turned around and saw Lan Yang staring with wide eyes, still standing there in a daze. "Hey, Lan Yang," Fang Hao called out. At this moment, Lan Yang finally reacted and replied, "Ah, Lord, what did you say?" "I said I need to take the bone dragon and the mantis men, and the rest of the skeleton soldiers will be left to you," he repeated. "Ah, they won't attack me, will they?" Lan Yang asked cautiously. "No, troop types have faction constraints. Since you have joined my territory, you belong to the same faction. They won't attack you, but instead, they will listen to your command. You can send them to scout or to dangerous places in the future," Fang Hao explained. Actually, there were many other restrictions. For example, command priority. That is to say, in the absence of Fang Hao's command, these undead would listen to the local governor. If the governor's command differed from Fang Hao's, they would ignore the governor's command. Oh, then will they run around randomly? What do they eat?" Lan Yang continued to ask. "Oh my, why are you so stupid? They just stand like this normally. When there's action, you just come down and lead them out and give commands. Besides, they are just skeletons. What do you want them to eat?" And Jia added from the side. Hearing Jia call her stupid, Lan Yang's face instantly stiffened. "Did I ask you? I don't need you to say anything." Then she looked at Fang Hao again and said, "Okay, Lord, I know what to do. Can't you leave me one bone dragon? The number of bone dragons is limited. I'll give you one when there are more later." "Oh, okay then." Fang Hao gave Lan Yang a few more instructions. Then, a soldier's report came from behind. "Lord, Miss He is here." "All right, let her come down." Then, footsteps came from behind, and He walked down holding her child. When she walked down the stone steps and saw the scene in the stone cave for the first time, He footsteps suddenly halted. But very quickly, she returned to normal and quickly walked to Fang Hao's side. She whispered, "Fang Hao, I don't have any luggage. I can leave now." Last night, He wanted to leave with him. Fang Hao agreed and reminded her to be mentally prepared to go to his territory. He thought about it all night and guessed many terrifying things that might happen. But when she saw the densely packed undead, her heart still trembled a little. But it was all right, and she quickly adapted. Actually, in the bandits' dungeon, she had seen many dead people. These skeletons were therefore not so difficult to accept. Before coming over, Hiyue went to see the girls who had taken care of her in the dungeon. She wanted to bring the girl she was close with along. But Fang Hao had only agreed to take her, so it wasn't good to bring up others. But in her heart, she had already made a plan to come back and pick them up after she settled down over there. Seeing that there were no other matters, Fang Hao took out the demon puppet. All right, then I'll take you back now. The next second, a teleportation light curtain appeared before them. He let Spencer, the bone dragon, and the skeleton mantis man go in first, and finally took Hiyue and Njia inside. As the light curtain dissipated, when they opened their eyes again, they were already in his territory. Spencer led the undead back to the hidden soldier cave. As for Hiyue, while cradling the child in her arms, she curiously surveyed the clearly different territory. The ground was paved with flat stone slabs, and street lamps were set up on both sides of the road. Various flowers were planted in the flower beds, and one could smell the fragrance of flowers just by standing there. Some girls in bunny ear-made outfits were busy with their respective tasks. From time to time, one could hear laughter like silver bells. Coincidentally, a squad of skeleton soldiers, marching in neat steps, walked along the stone path. Their skull heads all turned towards this side, took a glance, and then all turned back. As if nothing had happened. At this moment, a bunny-eared girl was directing a tall skeleton, nearly 3 meters in size. It was carrying a wine barrel and passing by. When she saw Fang Hao, and Jia, and the others, her eyes instantly lit up. She immediately turned her head and ran towards a building nearby, shouting loudly as she ran. Sister the master is back. The master is back. Her voice was very loud, and instantly, windows were pushed open one after another. They all looked towards this side. Hiyue looked at Fang Hao curiously. The latter smiled slightly and explained, "These are people from the territory. I've been away for a while and haven't seen them for a long time." "Oh," Hiyue just said, "Oh," and didn't say anything else. Soon, several bunny-eared girls rushed out from the building nearby. Only the girl leading them was clearly more beautiful and had a much more rounded figure. She was also dressed better. The bunny-eared girls all looked towards this side. When they saw Fang Hao, their expressions immediately turned joyful again. They quickly ran over. This time, Ear didn't rush into Fang Hao's arms, but instead curiously sized up Hiyue. Seeing the baby in the other party's arms, she cast a curious glance at Fang Hao. Then, with a calm expression, she said, "Master, and Jia, you're back." "Yes, this is Hiyue. I rescued her from the bandits. Arrange a place for her to stay. Later, choose a few smart maids to learn accounting and bookkeeping from her," Fang Hao introduced softly. Then he said to Hiyue, "This is Ear. She is in charge of the territory's daily life. If you need anything, you can tell her directly." Hiyue kept looking at Fang Hao and Ear. After the introductions were finished, she immediately showed a smile, saying, "Sister Ear is really beautiful. I was rescued by Boss Fang Hao this time, and I'll have to rely on Sister Ear's care in the future." "It's my pleasure." Xiaogua, take Sister Hiyue to find an empty room near the Lord's mansion. Make sure all the daily necessities are ready, Ear instructed softly. "Okay, Sister Ear." Hongwa took Hiyue away. After Hiyue left, and Jia pulled Ear and said, "Ear, quickly make some delicious food. I've gotten thin these past few days from hunger." Ear smiled slightly. "Okay." Ear prepared a hearty breakfast for the two of them, which improved their meals. At the same time, Ear learned about Hiyue's background from Njia. Hiyue was indeed unfortunate. Both mother and son almost died at the hands of the bandits. Now that she was here, at least she didn't have to worry about safety issues. After eating breakfast, Ear reluctantly let go of Fang Hao's hand. Fang Hao then took Njia back to the city of Blue Ocean. They appeared in the city square. Fang Hao made new dwarf carriages and had people load all the supplies onto them. The mercenaries and the personal guards from Lysis City also arrived here to gather. When everything was ready, the team set off again. In a mighty procession, they advanced towards the next stop, Jinmasta City. And the original 800-person guard team also increased to 1,700 people, most of whom were soldiers recruited by Fang Hao. The third day of travel, inside the temporary camp that had been set up. After dawn, it was still pitch black outside. Dark clouds obscured the sun, Heavy rain fell like a downpour, and the occasional muffled thunder echoed into the room. And Jia was still sleeping soundly. Fang Hao stood by the window, frowning as he looked at the sky outside. This kind of weather made marching impossible. "My lord, the madam asks you to come over." Outside the door, the guard's voice sounded. "Okay." Fang Hao nodded, left the room, and walked towards another room. Entering Rebecca's room, he saw a woman wearing a fitted off-white long dress, with her back to the door, bending over and fiddling with something on the ground. Because she was sitting on a chair and bending over significantly. The already fitted long dress was pulled extremely tight across her buttocks. From Fang Hao's perspective, it was like a plump and voluptuous peach. It could be said that the clothes produced by the bone fabric shop were definitely of superior quality. Despite such exaggerated stretching, there was not the slightest sign of damage. Instead, it fits snugly, showcasing the charm a mature woman should possess. What was she doing so early in the morning? Rebecca was tidying up her items that had been soaked by the rain. Suddenly, she realized that Fang Hao had already come over and was standing behind her, watching her. Gradually, she became a little embarrassed by being watched. "What are you standing there looking at? Come and sit." Fang Hao walked into the room and sat down on a chair nearby. "Did you ask me to come for something?" Rebecca also sat down nearby. "Well, look at this weather, we definitely can't march. Even if we rush through the rain, people might get sick later, which would delay progress. It's better to wait until the rain stops before setting off." Since the last incident with the Soul Reapers, the entire team was taken over by Fang Hao's generals. The commander of the Lysis City personal guards and the mercenary captain both took on the roles of captains. They usually conveyed orders. Similarly, Rebecca also lost her say in the team. Some matters had to be discussed with Fang Hao. "Yes, I thought so too. Then we'll leave when the weather clears up." Fang Hao nodded in agreement. Seeing Fang Hao agree readily, Rebecca suddenly didn't know what to say. The room fell into a brief silence. After a while, Rebecca suddenly said, "Thank you. If it weren't for you, I might have been in danger this time." She was talking about the Soul Reapers incident. "What's there to thank? We're together anyway. No matter what, I won't let you be in danger. But I still want to thank you for helping me so much." She lowered her head and thanked him again. The Rebecca of the past was so arrogant and unwilling to admit defeat. Many people wanted to pull Rebecca down from the center of power in Lysis City, but none succeeded. But today seemed a little different. Fang Hao casually opened the Lord's book and took a look, and was surprised to find that Rebecca's loyalty had increased by 3 points at some point, reaching 98 points. 98 points was already very high. Although it wasn't to the point of unwavering loyalty unto death, it had reached a level of trust and reliance. Seeing Rebecca a little down, Fang Hao deliberately teased her. "Madam, what's wrong?" Sitting beside her, after observing for a moment, he somewhat guessed why Rebecca was like this. It was nothing more than this. Fang Hao said the Soul Reapers might attack the team, and she confidently believed nothing would happen. However, the team was indeed ambushed in the morning. If it weren't for Fang Hao, her decision would have killed herself and everyone else. As someone who manages and plans, this was a fatal mistake. Are you still thinking about the Soul Reapers incident? The Marshall family planned this. Just be careful in the future. But I almost killed everyone. Fang Hao found it a little amusing to see Rebecca looking wronged and tearful, yet trying to hold back. No matter how strong she was still a woman in the end. But that pitiful look on Rebecca's face still had a special feeling. He raised his hand, hooked her chin, and made her look him in the eye. "You have me. Let alone these bandits. Even those guys from Silverwing City won't be allowed to bully you in the future." Rebecca hadn't expected Fang Hao to tilt her chin up. Just as she was about to react, she heard him say that no one would ever bully her again. Her body, which was about to pull away, froze in place. Suddenly, she discovered that something deep in her heart seemed to have been touched by Fang Hao. Ever since she could remember, everything she had was earned and fought for by herself, risking her life to get it. But now, suddenly finding someone who wanted to protect her, a strange wave of sorrow rose in her heart. Fang Hao continued, "Your husband here might not have great abilities, but protecting you in Lysis City is no problem. Just focus on management. If anyone bullies you, I'll go up and smash their dog heads." Uft. Rebecca instantly burst into a smile. Although those words sounded quite arrogant, Fang Hao did indeed possess great strength. Whether they could win a war against Silverwing City, she wasn't sure, but protecting Lysa's city should be no problem. Who's your wife? Don't talk nonsense. Fang Hao put on a serious face and said, Oh, I don't know who it was that found me and asked me to be her husband. The whole city can testify to it. Now you want to back out? It's too late. But, but there's such a big age gap between us. I could be your mother. What mother? That sounds so awful. Big sister sounds much better. Besides, haven't you heard? Life is precious, but love is more valuable. Rebecca's beautiful eyes blinked, somewhat surprised by the phrase, life is precious, but love is more valuable. With just that short sentence, it felt as if a beautiful story had appeared before her eyes. The room fell quiet, leaving only the man and woman staring at each other in silence. Fang Hao tilted her chin, his gaze gradually becoming burning hot as he slowly lowered his head toward the exquisite face before him. Watching the man get closer and closer, Rebecca's heartbeat was as heavy as the beating of a drum. She didn't know what to do, whether she should push him away. Seeing the two get closer and closer, she could even feel the man's hot breath. Rebecca immediately leaned back a bit. What are you doing? Fang Hao paused. Huh? He thought for a moment and said, The atmosphere has been built up to this point. It would be a bit unreasonable not to kiss. Rebecca's neck began to flush red. In her shame and annoyance, she said, How? How can we? If others find out, what will we do? Fang Hao saw a chance and immediately comforted her, saying, We are husband and wife to begin with. What are you afraid of? Besides, are you going to go around telling everyone? This, although Rebecca was not young, she truly hadn't been with a man before. Her previous husband, Aubrey, was only a fake husband in name, and Rebecca loathed the man, making it even more impossible for anything to happen between them. Today, suddenly progressing to this step with Fang Hao left her somewhat at a loss. Rebecca's chest heaved. She wanted to argue back, but she had no words to refute him. Fang Hao continued, Be good, close your eyes. Rebecca gripped her skirt tightly, her face flushing so red she felt like her head was about to smoke. Her heart was beating extremely fast. She had just closed her eyes when she immediately snapped them open again. Grit her teeth, she said, Just this once, consider it thanks for saving me. Besides, I don't like men. If you dare go out and talk nonsense, I'll tear, MMM. Mid-sentence, Fang Hao leaned in and kissed her directly. He forcefully blocked the rest of her words back into her throat. Rebecca's body instantly tensed up, feeling somewhat bewildered. Fang Hao, however, was very natural, taking the opportunity to wrap his arm around her waist, preventing her from leaning back further to escape his control. Rebecca held her breath, her eyes gradually becoming a bit dazed. Her hands, which had nowhere to go, slowly wound around the man's neck. Time seemed to freeze at this moment. Rebecca's face was still very red, her eyelashes trembling as she opened her eyes to look directly into the man's gaze. When they truly embraced each other, she found that she wasn't actually that resistant to the man. In any case, the man before her gave her a very good feeling. Gentle, considerate, and carrying a comfortable aura. Could it be that she didn't dislike men, but just hadn't found one she liked? And the Fang Hao before her might just be her type. Gradually, Rebecca tightened her arms around the man's neck, trying her best to respond to his passion. Just as she was losing herself in the moment and opening up her heart, Rebecca suddenly felt her skirt being lifted. Immediately following that, her chest felt a chill as a large hand gripped it, gradually increasing the pressure. Ah! Rebecca gave a startled cry, pushing Fang Hao away with one hand while the other firmly pressed down on the large hand inside her clothes. She snapped angrily, What are you doing? Like a cat with its fur standing on end, she glared at Fang Hao in anger and embarrassment. This. Fang Hao put on an innocent expression. No, wait, they had been kissing for half an hour. It was time for the next step, and besides, with this movement, his hand really had nowhere else to go. It was a bit tiring just holding it up. I thought we could move to the next step, so… Next step? Rebecca's face turned even redder. Take your hand out. Who told you we could move to the next step? seeing that Rebecca was truly a bit angry. Fang Hao withdrew his hand. Along the way, Rebecca held it tightly, not letting him make any small movements. But Fang Hao already knew Rebecca was truly big. She was the biggest and softest he had ever touched. All right, don't be angry. I won't move around anymore. Let's just kiss. Seeing Fang Hao leaning in again, Rebecca immediately turned her head away. Oomph, in your dreams. Wait until I'm in a good mood. After saying that, she shouted toward the door, "Someone, come in." The door opened, and Rebecca's personal maid walked in. Glancing at the scene in the room, she said in a low voice, "Madam." "Yes, the city lord hasn't had breakfast. Take him to eat," Rebecca said softly. "Yes, Lord City Lord, this way please. I will have breakfast prepared for you immediately." The maid stepped aside and said respectfully. Having finally made some progress in his relationship with Rebecca, Fang Hao was truly a bit reluctant to leave. But with Rebecca looking so ashamed and annoyed, it wasn't good for him to force anything. He was afraid that the loyalty he had built up might drop again because of this. Anyway, there had been a breakthrough, so he wasn't afraid of her running away. Ahem. Right. The weather's getting cold. Wear more clothes. After saying that, he followed the maid out of the room. The personal maid was Rebecca's confidant. When the two sides had cooperated to capture the faceless ones earlier, she had been the one to deliver the messages. Just now, she had also been guarding outside the door to prevent anyone from coming over. "What would you like to eat, my lord? I'll have it prepared and sent to you," the maid said with a smile. "Something simple. Just send it to my room later." "Understood. The weather is cold. You should also wear more, my lord, so you don't catch a cold." It seemed this maid's attitude toward him had also improved quite a bit. Okay. Fang Hao walked toward his room. He couldn't help but think back to the somewhat erotic scene just now. He savored the feeling from earlier. He couldn't help but sigh in admiration. Rebecca was truly moist. Fang Hao didn't go directly back to his room, but instead notified everyone to rest first. At the same time, he crafted some winter clothing. He distributed them to the soldiers. Outside the window, the sound of rain continued. After Fang Hao left, the anger on Rebecca's face also turned into a blush of shame. She wanted to get up to drink some water, but found that her legs were a bit weak. That bad guy, even calling her big sister, he really thinks a lot. As soon as she thought of Fang Hao, her heart instantly began to race again. Thump, thump, it beat. In her mind, the sensation of their lips meeting was still lingering. She touched her slightly aching lips. She felt that this guy's kissing was so skilled, while she, on the contrary, seemed quite inexperienced. Next time, I must be more assertive, otherwise wouldn't it be very embarrassing? The rainy day came quickly and went quickly. By dusk, the heavy rain had turned into a light drizzle. By the next morning, the sky had completely cleared up. Everyone got up very early and began to prepare for the next leg of the journey. Goods were loaded onto the carriages, tied tight with hemp rope and covered with oilskins. After eating breakfast and dismantling the temporary houses they had built, the group set off once more, continuing forward. However, since the heavy rain had just passed, the muddy roads slowed down the marching speed. They dragged along slowly the whole way. It took 4 days to reach Jinmasitu. Actually, it was obvious that the security around Jinmasitu was not as good as Lysis cities. On the last day, just as they were about to arrive, they encountered several groups of highwaymen one after another. Fang Hao ordered his men to cut them down, and no losses were incurred. Approaching the city wall, Rebecca arranged for someone to coordinate with the Jinmasita guards. After checking the goods and registering, the army was allowed to enter the city. According to the Federation's requirements, all cities must provide assistance to those attending the council and must not make things difficult for them with various excuses. A team of 1,700 people still attracted the attention of the city's residents. The sides of the road were crowded with people, all whispering and discussing. In the crowd, a middle-aged man was also staring at the team before him. First, he confirmed the flag. Then, he carefully counted the number of people in the team. He then backed out of the crowd, took a detour through a small path, and hurried toward the depths of the city. In the commoner district, inside a low-roofed house. Inside the small room, over 20 people were either lying or sitting. But inside the room, there was complete silence. No one spoke. Knock, knock, knock. The door was knocked on rhythmically. The people, who were originally on edge, immediately relaxed, but the weapons in their hands were still gripped tightly. One person near the door looked out through a crack in the old wooden boards. Seeing it was one of their own, he opened the door. As soon as he came in, the man immediately shut the door tight. He whispered, "Boss, the Lysis City team has entered the city, and their numbers have increased to over 1,000. What? How is that possible?" Everyone let out a cry of surprise. After the exclamation, everyone immediately realized something. The Lysis City army appearing here now meant that the Duoming's mountain stronghold no longer existed. Those people had nearly died there. It's all thanks to Third Boss. Otherwise, everyone would have died in the stronghold. Yeah, Third Boss was the thoughtful one. Not only did we not die, but we also brought all the money out. Exactly. Following Third Boss in the future, we'll definitely have good food and drink. The boss they were talking about was Li Junhu, who was sitting to the side in silence. Among these people were the soldiers he had recruited before, as well as some bandits who were loyal to him. In total, he had brought out over 20 people, and the former Doming's mountain stronghold likely no longer existed. Facing the flattery of his subordinates, Li Junhu's expression remained solemn throughout. He didn't doubt that Lysis City had the ability to wipe out the Duoming's mountain stronghold, but definitely not this quickly. Now that the stronghold had been wiped out so fast, Fang Hao must have intervened. At the same time, he felt a wave of relief. He had escaped early, otherwise he probably would have died there too. Seeing that Li Junhu remained silent for a long time, the subordinate's flattery became a bit awkward. Boss, what do we do next?" someone nearby asked softly. Li Junhu thought for a moment and said, "Everyone try to go out as little as possible lately. Endure for a while until they leave." "Oh, okay. Then boss, about the matter of contacting the nobles you mentioned, are we still going to do that?" the lackey continued to ask. Under Li Junhu's bed, there were several chests of gold coins. Li Junhu leaned his arms on his knees, deep in thought. The original plan was now somewhat unable to satisfy his ambitions. Fang Hao had grown strong by attaching himself to Lysis City, so could he also find a way through Jinmasato? Follow Fang Hao's old path. By then, he would also have the power to contend with Fang Hao. He pondered for a long time. When Li Junhu looked up again, ambition had reignited in his eyes. Why rely on some nobles? If he was going to play, he'd play big. No rush. Once they leave, we'll plan carefully how to take this city. Night fell. The door opened, and several people dressed in various disguises walked in. "Lord, we are back." Any news of Li Junhu?" Fang Hao asked directly. These people had not entered the city with the main team. Instead, Fang Hao had arranged for them to disguise themselves beforehand and enter the city early with different identities, to scout for news of Li Junhu. Hearing Fang Hao's question, the people looked at each other. One of them said, "Lord, 5 days ago, there were indeed people resembling bandits who entered the city with carriages. But these people acted very secretly and disappeared after entering the city. I bribed the city guards. They said many people have come to the city recently to escape the winter. It might not be easy to find out who the bandits are. There is some information in the tavern, but finding their hiding place will likely take some time." Everyone reported the information they had brought back one by one. It was certain that Li Junhu had indeed brought people into Jinmasato, but they had immediately gone into hiding upon arrival. And now, the Lysis City army had entered the city in a grand manner. Those guys would definitely be even less likely to show themselves. He thought for a moment and said, "Fine, consider them lucky. We'll deal with it later. All right, you've worked hard. Go down and rest." "Yes, Lord." Everyone bowed again and left the room. The night deepened. Fang Hao was still sitting at the table, waiting silently. And Jia stood guard to the side, yawning out of boredom. Knock, knock. The door was knocked on again. Without waiting for Fang Hao to speak, the door was pushed open, and Loli's small head peeked in. "Lord, I found the rocket blueprint. Through some means, Li Junhu purchased 3 cannons from Jinmasato. This is also the reason why they were able to develop quickly and easily break through the defenses of various villages and towns." While advancing, Fang Hao had discussed related matters with Rebecca. According to Rebecca, Humans and various races have fought wars, and Jinmasitu is an important location for providing military supplies and equipment to the troops, and they can also produce cannons. However, with the cessation of war, Silverwing City began to consolidate the power of city lords in various regions. Jinmasitu was no longer allowed to produce and manufacture them. The cannons the bandits bought should have been produced in earlier years. Even so, they still possessed great power when used to attack villages. The matter was understood, but Fang Hao thought even more deeply. Since Jinmasitu has the ability to produce cannons, it is highly likely that they still have the blueprints. Blueprints are generally stored in the machinery factory. So Fang Hao took advantage of the night and sent Luo Li to try her luck. Unexpectedly, she actually found them. Let me see. Taking the blueprint handed over by Luo Li, it immediately transformed into a beam of light and drilled into the Lord's book. First generation field cannon, tough wood 110, cast iron block 450, copper ingot 120, fine iron 80, essence of destruction 2. Description: a field cannon made by humans and dwarves. The huge barrel and heavy shells are enough to break through all enemy defenses. Even this discarded cannon already used fine iron and essence. But the power of the cannon is indeed great. If it were a siege battle, cannons would undoubtedly play a significant role in capturing a city. Sir, is this it? Luo Li asked softly from the side. Yes, well done. Fang Hao rubbed her little head. If it were anyone else, Luo Li would definitely be angry and then shake off the other person's hand. But for Fang Hao, she still showed a smile. And it's good as long as I can help you, sir. Can I sleep with Anya tonight? Luo Li widened her eyes, her face full of anticipation. Fang Hao looked at Anya on the side. He looked at the two of them strangely. You two aren't plotting something, are you? Going out to play? No, how could that be? Luo Li quickly waved her hands. Anya was also startled, her face showing the panic of being exposed. Let a CD take you two out to play for a bit, and come back to sleep before midnight. Fang Hao thought for a moment, and still let them go play. With Anya and Luo Li's skills, they really couldn't be kept under watch. If they snuck out, it would be easy for accidents to happen. Anyway, they were in the city, so letting them go play for a bit was fine. Okay. Anya and Luo Li immediately rushed out. They excitedly went to find a CD. With Anya gone, Fang Hao also enjoyed the peace and quiet. He had someone prepare fruit tea for him, lay on the bed, and open the Lord's book to pass the time. Li Jinhu's disappearance did not cause any ripples in the channel. Perhaps, the disappearance of anyone is considered a normal phenomenon in everyone's eyes. Selling blue set armor. Only this one set, first come, first served. Selling fairy wall lamp production blueprint. Those interested, please private message. Tianmei Furniture City, selling various furniture, accepting custom furniture orders. Those in need can private message with dimensions, prepayment required, payment upon delivery, guaranteed integrity. Rows of advertisements appeared on the screen. Fang Hao glanced at them roughly, found that there were no blueprints he needed, and chose to temporarily block such messages. Swish. The advertisements instantly disappeared, and the content of everyone chatting appeared. Damn it. I've had 3 waves of bandits come here in 5 days, all of them to steal food. If I didn't have so many soldiers under me, I would have been an easy target. Yeah, everyone is preparing for winter, and cities have also started collecting grain from villages. I have plenty of food here, so if any brothers need it, I can sell it cheaply. Chow, these dwarves here are going crazy and want to attack me. Fight them. Fight them. Why fight them? Don't involve family, understand? How can we fight? If we fight these people, more will come. It's so annoying. I heard that many natives are now capturing transmigrators. If you can't fight, just run. In any case, don't fall into their hands. Seeing this, Fang Hao frowned. He didn't know how many dwarf forces there were in this area, but the dwarves like Belargar came from 8 Peaks Mountain. Not long ago, there was civil unrest in 8 Peaks Mountain. The 2 factions within fought, and Belargar's group was driven out, eventually subdued by Fang Hao and settled in the Bloody Mountains. As for the dwarves mentioned in the channel, he didn't know if they were from 8 Peaks Mountain. If so, then the dwarves currently in power are a bit too warlike. Or is it that their reserves are not enough for this winter, and they need to wage war to plunder sufficient resources? These dwarves really won't let people rest. He watched everyone chat in the channel for a while. Then he switched to the territory channel. At this time, the territory channel was very lively. Since there was no limit on the number of messages in this channel, everyone was more active. As soon as he switched in, the newly joined Lanyang became the main force of the atmosphere group. Lanyang, I'll show you a special skill, pulling a tooth from a tiger's mouth image. And attached a picture. In the picture, Lanyang put her little head into the mouth of a golden lion and showed a frightened expression as if she was about to be eaten. Zhang Bin, wow, little beauty Lanyang is amazing. Hiyue, smiling face. Fule, 666. Suyang, 666. Yang Xiaolan, wow, such a big lion. Is it your pet? Lanyang, yes, I have many pets. Let me show you image. This picture was of a black bear standing upright. Lanyang stood next to it, only reaching the bear's waist. It showed the bear's size. Suyang, this bear is big and so obedient. Opening a circus would definitely be very profitable. This sentence enlightened Lanyang. All right, that makes sense. I'll train it now, and then open a video call tonight to perform for you. Okay. Everyone didn't care anyway, as they were bored at night. Having a lively person like Lanyang made the atmosphere in the channel much more relaxed. In the channel, there were many names that Fang Hao was unfamiliar with. These people had all joined the territory later through Fu Lei, Zhang Bin, and others. For example, Yang Xiaolan, who always spoke, was a city lord managed by Dong Jieyue. Since Dong Jieyue received military support from Fang Hao, she began to continuously expand her territory. The number of transmigrators she recruited was the largest in the territory. She had quite the demeanor of a big sister. After watching everyone chat for a while, Fang Hao also said in the channel, everyone start gathering resources for winter, mainly food and warm clothing. I will provide some weapons and armor here. You should try to exchange them with the natives as much as possible. You can recruit refugees, but do not recruit bandits and robbers, as they are difficult to manage. As soon as his message was sent, the scrolling chat in the channel instantly stopped. Lanyang, breaking rocks on my chest image. As soon as it was sent, it was immediately withdrawn. Zhang Bin, received. Lanyang, received. Fu Lei, received. Received. Messages scrolled, sending the received notification. If he only took care of his own city, then this winter would not be a problem at all. But in the territory, there were still a large number of natives who needed to get through this winter. More resources needed to be prepared. All right, everyone can continue chatting, Fang Hao said. After several minutes, the image that Lanyang had just withdrawn was sent again, breaking rocks on my chest image. This lively person. She even called herself smart back then. At this moment, the sound of a carriage came from outside the window. Looking down from the window, he saw a carriage slowly stopping. Rebecca, supported by her personal maid, got out of the carriage. She had returned from the banquet. Fang Hao's heart moved. He took out a pendant carved with a pattern from his pocket and held it in his hand. He hadn't had a chance to see Rebecca these past few days. He might as well take this opportunity to give her the jade pendant. Leaving the room, he immediately saw Rebecca and the maid coming up the stairs. City Lord. The maid smiled and bowed slightly. And Rebecca, upon seeing Fang Hao, subconsciously took a step back. Her face instantly flushed a little, but she quickly calmed down, her eyes already steady. She glanced at Fang Hao and said softly, "It's so late. Why haven't you rested yet?" "And, not yet. Looking at your face, did you drink?" Rebecca's face was slightly red, but not because she had been drinking. But she couldn't say it out loud. "Just some fruit wine. It's nothing." "Oh, that's good. Actually, fruit wine is nothing. Just don't forget to brush your teeth before bed, so you don't get a toothache later," Fang Hao suddenly said. Rebecca rolled her eyes at him, thinking to herself, "I'm not a child. Do you need to remind me of this before bed?" "And I know. Is there anything else?" Rebecca said again. Fang Hao hesitated for a moment and said softly, "Yes, let's talk in your room." Thump thump. Hearing this sentence, Rebecca's heart pounded like a drum, making her heavy chest heave slightly. "Is there anything that can't be discussed tomorrow?" Rebecca said softly. Anyway, you're not asleep yet. It'll be over quickly. It won't delay your rest. Fang Hao replied casually. Rebecca's face turned even redder. What's over quickly? What he said. It sounded a little off no matter how she heard it. Come in, Rebecca said emotionlessly and walked straight into the room. Fang Hao followed behind, and the maid, very thoughtfully, closed the door and personally stood guard at the door. In the spacious and tidy room, only the man and woman remained. Fang Hao sat down on the chair, his gaze sweeping over Rebecca's face and red lips. And Rebecca sat at the table, just poured herself a glass of water when she noticed Fang Hao's gaze. Annoyed, she said, Look, always looking. It's not like there's anything good to see. It's beautiful. It's the first time I've seen you wear makeup. Rebecca snorted softly and glanced at her reflection in the window. It's all things you transmigrators came up with, called cosmetics. I just bought them and tried them. And this makeup suits you very well. As if I need you to tell me. Rebecca rolled her eyes at him and then said, Speak. What is it? I have to travel tomorrow. I need to rest. Hearing this, Fang Hao didn't continue to chat about other things. Instead, he took out a translucent white jade pendant from his pocket and placed it on the table. With your status, you can buy anything you like. I can only give you something that can't be bought outside. Rebecca glanced at the jade pendant on the table, a flash of joy in her eyes. But the words she spoke had nothing to do with this matter. After leaving Jinmasu, the road will be much safer. At that time, the team will also have to speed up to make up for the lost time. Fang Hao leaned back in his chair and replied, Okay, I'll arrange it. The two chatted aimlessly, but Rebecca no longer used sleeping as an excuse to make him leave. After chatting for a while, Rebecca couldn't hold on anymore and started yawning. Fang Hao also didn't plan to stay any longer. He stood up and walked to Rebecca's side, hooking her chin with one hand again. Rebecca, sitting on the chair, instantly froze. Just as she was about to cry out, Fang Hao covered her mouth and pointed to the door. Shoo, don't let them hear outside. Saying that, he kissed her heavily in her startled eyes. Rebecca pounded his shoulder in shame and anger. But Fang Hao's hand was like iron pliers, holding her tightly. And she indeed didn't dare to make too much noise, lest this matter be heard by those outside. As this kiss became more and more gentle, Rebecca also stopped pushing him away. She wrapped her arms around his shoulders and began to respond to his advances. It lasted for a long time. Only then did the two reluctantly separate. Rebecca also instantly sobered up, stood up abruptly, her face and neck flushed red. Just as she was about to speak, her eyes subconsciously swept towards the door again. She glared fiercely at the young and handsome man in front of her. Fang Hao was not embarrassed at all and leaned closer, lowering his voice and saying, Good sister, how about I stay? Rebecca almost couldn't breathe. A single good sister made her get goosebumps all over. She gritted her teeth and said, Dream on. Go back to sleep. Seeing that Rebecca refused to agree, Fang Hao had no choice but to open the door, smile slightly at the maid, and return to his own room. Seeing Fang Hao leave, Rebecca sat down at the table again. She picked up the jade pendant placed on the table and examined it carefully. The quality of the jade pendant was very good, warm to the touch, and clearly a good item. He sure knows how to please women. As she rubbed the jade pendant with her fingers, she felt that there seemed to be some pattern carved on the back. Turning it over to look, she saw a micro-carving on the back. Obviously, the carver's skill was not very good, and it even seemed to have wasted such a good piece of jade. The pattern was very simple, two people, a man and a woman. The woman was sitting by the bed, and the man was lifting the woman's chin with one hand, in the posture of about to kiss. Thump! Rebecca's heart, which had just calmed down, immediately began to beat violently again, as if she felt the other person's kiss again. Madam, the hot water is ready. You can take a bath. The maid's voice sounded. Rebecca hung the jade pendant around her neck, hiding it between her breasts. And I know, at the same time. Silver Wing City, the mansion of Grote Marshall. In a room, there were sounds of a man's heavy breathing and a woman's moaning. After a short while, the sounds of the two gradually subsided. Only the woman's reluctant voice remained. Master, where are you going? Why are you leaving? Grote walked slowly out of the bedroom, supporting his waist with one hand, and came to the study. He pushed open the study door, took off the lampshade, and the light of the night-glowing stone instantly illuminated the room. Using the bright light, he took out a wooden box from under the desk. The wooden box opened, revealing a section of a dragon horn rhinoceros's horn. He used a small knife to gently scrape off a layer of powder from the horn and steeped it in tea. Just as he was about to put the horn away, urgent footsteps were already heard from outside the door. Following that, there was a knock on the door. Thump thump. What is it? Grote's tone was somewhat displeased. He was already feeling irritated because he hadn't performed well, so he was not in a good mood. Master, the person stationed in Jinmasitu sent back news. Those bandits failed, and the team from Lich's city arrived in Jinmasitu today. Grote's expression immediately became even more unpleasant. Come in and speak. The door opened, and the butler walked in. He bowed slightly, just about to report, but saw the dragon horn rhino horn in Grote's hand. The claim that this kind of horn can strengthen virility is not a secret. Because of this, the horn of the dragon horn rhino has been driven up to sky-high prices. Grote followed the butler's gaze and realized the horn hadn't been put away yet. He said softly, this is for Hubert. He's always had some difficulties in that area. When he asked me to manage the trade caravan, he told me to keep an eye out for some." The butler's expression remained unchanged. "By my calculations, Lord Hubert's team should be arriving here soon." Grote nodded slightly, not continuing the conversation on this matter. Instead, he said with a gloomy face, "You mean those guys failed? They didn't catch Rebecca?" Mentioning Rebecca, Grote felt a rush of heat shoot into his lower body. Immediately, he felt something. He hadn't even drunk the medicinal wine yet. The butler stood there straight, his face also looking somewhat grim. According to reports, the team from Lysith City entered Jinmasta this morning. There were many of them, and from their appearance, you couldn't see any damage at all. You mean those bandits took the job but didn't do it and let them pass? Grote slammed his hand on the table. They were taking a great risk with this matter. The butler immediately explained. Initially, our people thought the same and rushed directly to the bandits' location, but when they arrived, they found that the stronghold had changed owners. Hearing this news, Grote's eyes also widened. The stronghold is gone? Changed owners? How is that possible? The reason Grote agreed to hire these bandits was not only because they were good at this kind of thing, but also because the bandits actually had a certain level of strength. Over 3,000 people, just to capture a passing team. It was simply an easy and simple task. A stronghold with over 3,000 people. Even Lysith City couldn't eliminate it so easily. How many people did you say Rebecca brought? Over 1,000 people. Over 1,000 people can wipe out a bandit stronghold? How is that possible? The butler thought for a moment. Perhaps others helped. Our people did see that there were no bandits in the stronghold, but it was occupied by others. Inside the room, there was a long silence. Finally, Grote gritted his teeth and said, "Sigh. I shouldn't have relied on those useless guys, a bunch of good-for-nothings. If they wanted to die, they should have died earlier, making me busy for nothing. Master, what should we do next? They will continue their journey tomorrow morning. Should we still proceed?" Grote finally waved his hand helplessly. Sigh. "Forget it. Next, they will enter the territory of Silverwing City. It's too difficult to eliminate a team of over 1,000 people without leaving a trace. I'll think of a way to act in the city." "Yes, Master is thoughtful. All right, you may leave. Oh, by the way, recently keep an eye out for new mercenaries in the city. We need some unfamiliar faces, the kind whose identities can't be traced even if they die." "Understood, Master. People like that are easy to find." "Okay, go on." Just as the butler was about to leave, he thought of something else. He turned back and looked cautiously, saying, "Master, I recently heard from those transmigrators that tiger penis has a strong medicinal effect. Why don't I get some? You can give it to Lord Hubert when the time comes. After all, you've been friends for many years." Grote was stunned, cleared his throat. "Is it effective? I heard you soak it in wine and drink it. After drinking for a few days, you get stronger each day." You are quite thoughtful. Prepare some, and I'll give it to Hubert when the time comes." "All right, then I won't disturb your rest, Master." With that, The butler exited the room. Grot picked up the water mixed with horn powder and took a sip. He felt it, but didn't feel much. It wasn't as effective as just mentioning Rebecca earlier. His mind returned to the tiger penis the butler mentioned, feeling a bit of anticipation. After leaving Rebecca's place, Fang Hao poured himself a cup of tea, then lay on the bed, trying to fall asleep. His mind was full of Rebecca, her face flushed with shyness, yet unwilling to lower her dignity. As he thought, drowsiness washed over him. Just as he was in a daze, starting to drift into a dream. Ding! The Lord's book suddenly sent a private chat notification. Who is it? Not sleeping in the middle of the night. Fang Hao yelled exasperatedly. Angry as he was, he still got up to check. Opening the Lord's book, he saw that Deng Bin had sent a private trade offer. Flax, iron ore, rare essence, and even tables, chairs, and chandeliers were sent over. The quantity of flax even reached tens of thousands of units. The trade method was free trade. Even if Fang Hao put up 1 unit of wood, the trade would go through. Fang Hao didn't understand the other party's intention. Was she moving, or was something wrong? He sent a private message. What's going on? But this message was like a stone sinking into the sea, receiving no reply. Fang Hao reconfirmed. Deng Bin's avatar hadn't turned gray, which meant she was fine. After thinking for a moment, he still accepted all the items. Then he traded these items to Zhang Bin. He couldn't carry them while traveling. If it was a mistake by the other party, he could just return them later. On the other side, inside Deng Bin's territory, torch after torch lit up the entire city wall. Archers lined up on the city wall, drawing arrows, their eyes nervously fixed on the area outside the city. Below the city walls, a force of over 2,000 soldiers and armed farmers stood ready. Including some auxiliary troops, the number approached 3,000. Deng Bin, wearing leather armor and a knight's sword at her waist, had a cold expression. And about 300 meters outside the city, hundreds of well-equipped dwarves were gathering. They looked like they were preparing to attack the city. Lately, the dwarves' movements had been quite frequent. Patrolling soldiers always reported news of dwarves attacking other nearby territories. They even saw humans being led away like slaves, bound with iron chains, towards the direction of 8 Peaks Mountain. Although Deng Bin had realized the dwarves might make a move against her. However, she still held a glimmer of hope, hoping that their cooperation during this period could lead to peaceful coexistence. But now, with the enemy at the city gates, it proved how ridiculous her luck mentality, wishful thinking, was. Lord, the number of dwarves is not large. At this scale, it's basically impossible for them to attack the city. The hero Zachary walked quickly and said solemnly. Zachary was a hero Deng Bin had rescued in the wilderness. Later, he joined Deng Bin's territory. Deng Bin had put a lot of effort into increasing this hero's loyalty. There was no other way, given how rare heroes were. Hearing Zachary's words, Deng Bin also nodded. The number of dwarves was less than 1,000. They were divided into 2 formations. One was dwarf infantry with shields and one-handed axes, and the other was dwarf archers equipped with bolt-action rifles. It was currently unclear if there were others in the darkness further away. Although the rifles had a certain deterrent effect, her city was not to be trifled with either. By planting flax and exchanging resources from Fang Hao, her development speed was among the top ranks in the channel. The city wall was level 9, and she was accumulating resources for the final level 10. The number of troops and armed farmers reached nearly 3,000. Relying solely on these dwarves, she was still confident in defending the city. These little dwarves really think we're soft targets, that they can just pinch us whenever they want. Deng Bin also said coldly. Just as the two were talking in low voices, changes appeared again within the dwarf ranks. The shield soldiers began to spread out, and machine after machine was pushed to the front. When they saw these machines, Deng Bin and Zachary's expressions suddenly changed. Cannons, ballistae. As expected, dwarves are known for their machinery. How could they attack a city just by relying on numbers? The dwarves' machinery had a somewhat unique design, but the tall, thick, round cannon barrels confirmed they were cannons. And there was more than one. At this moment, the appearance of the machines instantly made Deng Bin feel uncertain. Relying on the city, she wasn't afraid of these dwarves. even if they were well equipped. But with cannons, they could blast open the city gates. Then how much chance of winning did they have? Zachary had already left, and after a short while, he walked back quickly. He lowered his voice and said, "Lord, I've prepared horses for you at the east gate. If the city falls, you should ride east." It seems that with the appearance of these machines, Zachary has lost a lot of confidence. "I'm not leaving, and with so many of us, we might not lose to these dwarves," Dangbin said through gritted teeth. "Of course, if we can hold on, we must fight to defend, but if we really can't hold on, staying will only be a pointless sacrifice," Zachary said in a deep voice. "We'll see then." Just as the two were talking, a dwarf riding a giant antlered deer walked out of the dwarf formation under the gaze of everyone. He came straight to the city walls. He was wearing silver armor with gold trim, and his thick red beard was scattered across his chest. His gaze swept over the soldiers on the city wall, and he said mockingly, "Miss Dangbin, King Rune of Eight Peaks Mountain invites you to be a guest at Eight Peaks Mountain. Come with us." There was a big difference between the dwarf's words and attitude below the city. His tone was full of arrogance and threat, but he used the word invite in his speech. This false friendliness made Dangbin feel as disgusted as if she had seen maggots. But on the surface, Dangbin showed a smile and said loudly, "Oh, since His Majesty Rune invites me, I naturally won't refuse." After thinking for a moment, she continued, "During this time, I've also received a lot of care from Eight Peaks Mountain, so I naturally need to prepare a thank you gift. I'm just worried about what to prepare. Why don't you come into the city and help me decide?" Creak. As soon as she finished speaking, the tightly shut city gate instantly opened a crack. It was enough for the dwarf below the city to enter. The dwarf riding the giant antlered deer's eyelids twitched. He looked at the city gate in front of him, but had no intention of going in. In his heart, he was surprised by Dangbin's boldness. At this time, she still dared to open the city gate. Did she not understand at all, or did she have some other meaning? From the looks of it, she didn't seem nervous either. Could there be another plan? "There's no need to go in. His Majesty Rune doesn't care about your gift. Why don't you come down and come with us?" the dwarf below the city said again. On the city wall, Dangbin's heart was pounding. She had even prepared to directly give the order to kill the opponent after he entered. "Sir, after all, I am a woman. It is always a bit inappropriate to invite a woman over in the middle of the night. Why don't I get dressed up tomorrow morning and then go with you?" Dangbin continued to say loudly. The city gate closed again, and the two sides were once again in a state of confrontation. The dwarf below the city naturally knew that the other party was making all sorts of excuses to delay. In his heart, he was already a little impatient. The giant antlered deer began to pace back and forth restlessly. The dwarf angrily punched the giant antlered deer's neck twice to calm it down. Seeing that Dangbin was unwilling to come out, the dwarf no longer wasted time. He said coldly, "Since that's the case, Dangbin, don't blame us." After speaking, he turned and walked back. On the city wall, Dangbin's eyes also became somewhat cold. "Kill him." Hero Zachary immediately drew his bow and aimed. Bang! The bowstring twanged lightly, and an arrow shot out rapidly. The dwarf on the giant antlered deer had just turned around when he saw a cold glint shooting towards him from the corner of his eye. His body instantly leaned forward. The entire person lay on the back of the giant deer. Clang! The arrow scraped a spark on the iron helmet and flew past. The dwarf narrowly escaped death, his heart filled with terror. He slapped the giant deer, and it quickly ran back to the dwarf camp with a clatter. Whoosh! Immediately after, the sound of a horn sounded. The dwarves began to move, approaching forward. Dangbin looked at the dwarves, the coldness in her eyes growing stronger. "Archers prepare, everyone prepare," Dangbin shouted. Swish, swish, swish. All the archers drew the arrows from their waists and made their final preparations. However, what happened next caused Dangbin's face to change drastically. The despair in her heart grew even stronger. Just when everyone was ready, the dwarves did not launch an attack, but began to adjust the angle of their cannons. Immediately after, there were loud roars. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of cannons echoed through the sky. "Find cover," Be careful of the cannons. Boom, boom. Before the words were finished, the entire wall began to tremble violently. Bang! A cannonball hit the top of the city wall, and earth and stones exploded. The archers nearby were blown away, and pieces of flesh were scattered inside the city. Boom, boom, boom. The city wall trembled repeatedly, the world spinning. The soldiers could barely stand steady. People were constantly being blown away. Blinding firelight kept exploding below the city and on the city wall. The wall began to crack, and rubble rained down from the sky. The defenders on the city wall were instantly suppressed and could only crouch down, running back and forth on the city wall, dragging the wounded down. Kill. When all the defenders were beaten down and couldn't raise their heads. Below, the sounds of shouting and killing from the dwarves had already been heard. Siege ladders with hooks were attached to the city wall, and the dwarf infantry, holding shields, began to climb up. Dangbin slapped her buzzing ears and looked down. The enemy's cannons had stopped. Dangbin helped up an archer beside her and shouted, "Archers attack! Throw stones and logs, quickly!" The dizzy archers immediately stood up and began to shoot downwards. Auxiliary soldiers began to carry stones and logs and throw them down from the city wall. The dwarves below were crushed and wailed. Clatter, clatter, clatter. Zachary walked over quickly, bending down and saying, "The city gate is still there, but it definitely won't withstand a second cannon barrage. Once the city gate is opened, I'm afraid it will be very difficult to defend." He was speaking relatively euphemistically. Once the city gate was opened, with the basic quality of the dwarf troops, fighting the soldiers in the city would basically be an overwhelming crushing. It would be even more over then. Dangbin did not answer, but looked out. Whoosh! A bullet flew past her cheek. Her head, which had just peeked out, immediately retracted. But immediately, she peeked out again and quickly glanced at the dwarf position. In her ears was the deafening sound of shouting and killing. Dangbin leaned against the parapet, closing her eyes in thought. The enemy's formation arrangement appeared in her mind, and she thought about how to deal with it. After carefully weighing the pros and cons, when she opened her eyes again, a fierce look appeared. She said coldly, "Zachary, take everyone below and go out through the North City Gate, directly ambushing their artillery and archers in the rear." Zachary was stunned, his brows furrowed. "What about you? Without troops, what will happen if they attack?" "I'm fine. If you succeed, drive them away. If you don't succeed, retreat to the east. I will also lead people to retreat then, and we will gather in the Crownstone Forest," Dangbin said. Zachary gritted his teeth. "Okay." After speaking, he led the troops down. Before long, the North City Gate quietly opened. A large number of soldiers left under the cover of darkness. In the city, only over 500 soldiers remained, relying on the city wall to resist the enemy. But as time passed, the casualties began to increase. Of the more than 500 people who remained, only less than 200 were left at this time. Dangbin was covered in blood, panting heavily. She swept her long sword horizontally, using the momentum to kick a dwarf off the city wall. Just then, on the right side of the dwarf camp, sounds of shouting and killing came. They saw Zachary leading the infantry, circling around, and directly charging towards the dwarves. Joy immediately appeared on Dangbin's face, but this joy did not last long before it turned into confusion and bewilderment. Facing the enemy, who had circled around, the dwarves operating the machines did not show any panic. Instead, they operated the machines in an orderly manner. A 4-barreled cannon was turned. The cold muzzles were aimed at Zachary and others. The next second, the 4-barreled cannon roared. Donger, donger, donger. A sound like striking brass pipes rang out. Among the charging humans, a mist of blood rose in patches. Dismembered limbs and flesh splattered everywhere. In the blink of an eye, a large number of the human side had already been killed or wounded. Zachary frowned and looked at his companions who were charging with him, but they were gone. It was a vast emptiness, filled with red blood mist. Boom, boom, boom. The cannon fire, sounding like brass pipes being struck, continued. Cannonballs whizzed past, and severed limbs splattered everywhere. The human side suffered heavy casualties before even charging into the dwarf ranks. Zachary's forward momentum slowed. He wiped away the blood splattering beside him and looked around in confusion. In an instant, his face turned extremely grim. There were shattered bodies and blood everywhere. And those who were still alive were already in a state of panic, completely devoid of fighting spirit. Zachary wanted to say something to boost morale, but the roar of the falling cannonballs completely drowned out his voice, making it impossible for anyone else to hear. A feeling of powerlessness rose in his heart. The gap between the two sides was too great. Their equipment levels were not even on the same plane. He looked up towards the location of the territory. On the city wall, Deng Bin was waving his arms continuously towards them, pointing repeatedly in the northeast direction. He was signaling for them to retreat in the northeast direction. Zachary looked again at the dwarf machinery positions in the distance. Over there, the dwarves had already set up their defenses. If they charged in, they probably wouldn't be able to defeat them. Nodding towards Deng Bin, Zachary roared, "Retreat! Follow me and retreat." The sound of the cannon fire masked his voice. But the surrounding soldiers, seeing his actions, could guess what he meant. Following behind Zachary, stepping over corpses and rivers of blood, they ran into the distance. At the same time, Deng Bin saw Zachary and the others retreating. He no longer hesitated either. After getting off the city wall, he activated the constructs he had obtained from Fang Hao. Using the gaps between the cannon bombardments, he said to the remaining soldiers, "Have the constructs cover the rear, and the rest of you retreat with me. Hurry!" No one bothered to pack anything. Following Deng Bin, they exited the city through another city gate and ran towards the direction of the Crownstone Forest. Behind them, amidst the roar of collapsing structures, the city gate was completely shattered. The dwarves had broken into the city. The constructs sensed the enemy and slowly stood up, swinging their blades one after another. They blocked the enemy from entering. Another 2 days passed. The sky was azure, without a single cloud. The sun was scorching hot like a fireball. Inside a Beastman gathering market on the east side of Tasco Beastman City, wagons were being uncovered, revealing loads of swords and various pieces of armor underneath. The rabbit maid Millie, with her hands on her small waist, stood on a wagon and shouted loudly, "Come and see. Weapons from the human city. Killing people is as easy as slicing melons and dicing vegetables." In the quiet market, a small-bodied rabbit girl with unusually heavy breasts was shouting loudly. In an instant, she attracted the attention of many surrounding beastmen. In the beastman tradition, the rabbit race was the lowest-ranking race among the beastmen. Their weak physique simply did not earn them recognition from the beastmen. Beastmen, the only value they could be used for was that the rabbit race could fetch a good price among human nobles. In the past, whenever they appeared in beastman gathering places, they were always cautious. How could they be so brazen like this? "Hey, this little guy, her chest is quite big. If we take her to the human side, she'll definitely." A beastman walked forward with a mocking expression. But as soon as he took a step, his companion grabbed his arm. He pointed to the group beside the rabbit girl. There were nearly 1,000 fully armed beastmen. There was also a woman sharpening a spider leg with a file, leaning against the wagon. She was clearly a hero. This beastman immediately shut up, but his words had already been heard by Millie. Her little face hardened. "Which gang are you from? Who's your boss? This granny doesn't kill nameless ghosts with her blade. Tell me your name, and I'll send you to meet your ancestors." As soon as she said this, the entire scene instantly fell silent. What was with these bandit-like words? "This rabbit, is she that imposing?" "Ahem, I didn't say anything. I'm asking how much these weapons are." The beastman's tone changed, and he started asking for the price. Millie glanced at him and continued to say loudly, "Not for sale." "Not for sale? Didn't you just shout that you were selling them? If you're not selling, what did you bring them here for?" A beastman asked loudly. "That's right, not for sale. We're trading for furs, grain, we want it all." Hearing this news, the beastmen started to get noisy, and the gathering and commotion here began to spread outwards. More and more beastmen gathered around, and even some people at the stalls were looking over from a distance. "Is it true or false? Are you willing to trade weapons for furs?" Another beastman pressed. "You're not trying to trick us, are you? If you don't keep your word, be careful or we'll twist your neck off." Beastmen are different from humans. They primarily hunt and herd and rarely grow crops. Each tribe has a large amount of furs stored. Therefore, furs are not worth much here. Moreover, most beastmen are very strong, and even in winter, they can get by with just some fur clothing. All these reasons made furs something that was not easy to sell during this time, and some were not even wanted at all. Furthermore, whenever winter approached, it was also the most chaotic time for the various tribes. Those with insufficient food reserves would launch attacks on other tribes. At this time, weapons and equipment became essential items. Hearing the commotion here, a stall owner rolled up the unsellable furs and ran over with big strides. He asked loudly, "I have furs, how do we trade?" Millie extended her 5 slender white fingers and shouted, "1 weapon for 5. Okay, I have over 100 sheets here, for 2 weapons." The beast man threw the bundled furs forward. Ah! Looking at the furs on the ground, Millie was stunned. The stall owner's expression immediately changed. "You just said it. Why are you going back on your word?" Ah! Millie looked back at Domina, who was still focused on repairing her spider legs. "Trade. How about this? Since you're the first to trade, I'll give you 1 more." Millie said, picking up 3 one-handed broadswords and throwing them to the other party. The latter took them and examined them carefully. These were one-handed broadswords. The blades were sharp, and a light touch could cut a finger. The back of the blade was wide and thick, giving it a substantial weight when swung. The handle was also wrapped with dense animal skin rope to prevent it from slipping off when swung. Good swords, good swords. The beastman swung them while praising them profusely. The people beside him kept their distance, but they could also see that the quality of the broadswords was very good. According to their grade, they had probably reached green or even blue level. The surrounding beastmen also gathered around. "How are they? How's the quality of these swords?" someone asked curiously. The beastman put away the 3 swords, his face full of joy. "They are good swords, and the weight is also suitable, not as light as human weapons used to be." "Hmm? Such good things. Are you really trading them for furs?" The beastman moved a bit closer again and lowered his voice. "I feel like this rabbit is a bit silly, actually transporting human weapons so far just to trade for furs. Don't you think she's silly?" Hum. All the beastmen nearby nodded in agreement. Immediately after, even more people squeezed towards the wagons. "Are you trading all these swords and blades?" Another beastman asked loudly. "Trading, and also armor, plate armor, helmets, they are all for exchange." Millie answered loudly, her little face flushed. "I have furs here. I'll trade for a set of plate armor. I'll trade for 2 swords." In an instant, everyone rushed forward, shouting loudly, afraid that if they were late, everything would be snatched up by others. The scene suddenly became chaotic. Domina began to arrange people to maintain order and start exchanging in an orderly queue. Not far away, a beast man with a runny nose said to his companion, "This rabbit is so stupid, actually trading equipment for furs. Is she not very smart?" "She doesn't look smart at all. The sillier she is, the better, so we can trade for these weapons." His companion tugged at his pants stuck in his butt and continued, "You stay here and keep an eye on things. I'll go back and inform the chief, then bring all the furs over and trade for weapons with this silly rabbit. Go quickly, go quickly. Bring over even those that are already moldy in the warehouse. Maybe this rabbit wants those too." "Okay." The beastman didn't hesitate and turned around to run towards his tribe. Similarly, there were quite a few people who went back to their tribes to inform them. The rule of the beastmen is the law of the jungle. If the nearby tribes are all trading for weapons, and you don't want to trade, you'll be a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Therefore, whether actively or passively, they all started trading. In addition to furs, some people also brought their livestock for exchange. In short, the harvest exceeded the expectations of Millie and the others. The same thing was happening in every subsidiary city. Fang Hao was building large rows of connected warehouses on one side of his territory. These warehouses were where he stored weapons and equipment. They were used for daily sales in the Channel and Trade Alliance. This time, the Bone Dragon brought a large batch of equipment and distributed it to each city. They were exchanged with the nearby indigenous people for grain, furs, cotton, and other items needed for winter. Once winter arrived, there would be many displaced people and bandits. Villages and towns everywhere were forming temporary armed groups. Therefore, these things are very popular no matter where they are sold. The border of the barren battlefield. Dong Jiue sat upright on her bone steed, holding a bright silver spear, her gaze cold as she looked at the dozens of undead corpses ahead. When the rotting corpses swayed their bodies and walked towards them, Dong Jiue ordered sternly, "Go, kill these rotting corpses for me." Clatter, clatter. Behind her, 20 towering skeleton trolls, along with hundreds of skeleton warriors, had already charged forward, weapons raised. The warhammers in the trolls' hands whistled through the air. One strike could smash a rotting corpse's head to pulp. The remaining skeleton warriors also quickly surrounded them, hacking and slashing with their swords. Killing the rotting corpses was as simple as walking past them. The skeleton soldiers returned to their positions, leaving only puddles of muddy corpse flesh where the enemies had stood. The battle was over. Only then did human soldiers come over to collect the equipment and weapons from the corpses. They placed them in the wagons behind. Dong Jiue sat on her horse's back, constantly looking into the distance. Damn it! Where are the native villages around here? Where am I supposed to find people to trade supplies with? According to Fang Hao's requirements, Dong Jiue was searching for native villages along the border of the barren battlefield. But after 2 days of searching, she hadn't seen a single living village, only strange monsters appearing one after another. These past 2 days had been spent clearing out these monsters. Moreover, she had also consolidated some of the traverser cities that had appeared nearby. Currently, she had already gathered over 10 people under her command, making her arguably the lord with the largest number of people gathered under Fang Hao. After the battlefield was cleared, Dong Jiue swung her spear and continued, "Keep moving forward along the road." Clatter, clatter. The skeletons marched in neat steps, following behind Dong Jiue. Behind the skeletons were the human soldiers driving the wagons. At the same time, Dong Jiue really liked commanding the skeleton soldiers. Aside from being a bit ugly, there seemed to be no other drawbacks. They didn't eat or drink, and she didn't have to worry about loyalty. She even thought to herself that Fang Hao was just lucky. If she had joined the Undead faction, she could have taken off too. Just as the team was moving forward along the road, a rapid sound of hooves came from the front. 2 cavalry scouts quickly approached. "My lord, we've found a small human team in the woods ahead, being chased by dwarves," the scout reported loudly. Hearing this news, Dong Jiue's brow furrowed. Humans, dwarves? How is it that she kept running into dwarves? How many people are there? There are over 200 humans, all injured and with no supplies. The dwarves are giant antler deer cavalry, and there are over 300 of them, the scout replied. There were very few humans in this area. She didn't know if these humans were natives or a team of traversers. Dong Jiue thought for a moment and ordered, "The team will rest here. You take me to see those people." "Yes, my lord. This way," the scout said, urging his horse forward. Dong Jiue also flicked her reins, and the skeleton horse quickly followed. The two rode forward and entered a patch of woods. From a distance, they could hear the sounds of shouting and the crackle of gunfire. They continued to approach. The sounds became clearer. Carefully hiding in the shadows, Dong Jiue saw the scene unfolding ahead. Giant antler deer riders, dwarves, were weaving through the woods, chasing the human team in front. The scout had said there were over 200 humans, but looking now, there were probably only a little over 100 left. Normally, cavalry wasn't suited for this kind of forest combat. Trees and bushes would hinder the cavalry's momentum. Once the horses couldn't run at full speed, the cavalry's advantage was even less than that of ordinary infantry. But these giant antler deer were very special. They were extremely nimble, leaping and weaving, which not only didn't affect their speed, but also kept them moving quickly. The dwarves sat on the backs of the giant antler deer, holding new bolt-action rifles. Like toying with prey, they leisurely chased the fleeing humans. Among the constantly running humans, it was clear they were protecting a woman. Although dressed somewhat neutrally, it was still evident she was a woman, and it was certain she was a traverser. Although she didn't know how this traverser team had offended the dwarfs, Now that she had seen them, she couldn't just let them be killed. Having made up her mind, Dong Jieyue continued to instruct, "You stay here and follow them. I'll bring the team over and surround them." "All right." The scout agreed and followed behind the group from a distance. Dong Jieyue returned to her team, waved her hand, and the army began to move towards the woods. In the woods. Haha, run, go on. If you're tired, rest for a bit, then keep running. The dwarves stopped and chuckled. And opposite them, Deng Bin, with her remaining subordinates, gathered together with pale faces, wary of the dwarves ahead. They really couldn't run anymore. Although their evacuation plan had been successful, the dwarf cavalry team had still caught up to them, and they had been chasing them all the way until now. They didn't know what belief had kept them going until now, but at this point, they truly couldn't escape any longer. Hearing the dwarves' mocking words, the anger in Deng Bin's eyes intensified. She gritted her teeth and said, "King Rune invited me. If you kill me, aren't you afraid you won't be able to explain yourselves when you return?" Ha ha. She really thinks highly of herself. The dwarves burst into laughter, scoffing. "Explain what? You're not the only traverser we've captured." Deng Bin's face changed again. The dwarves were indeed capturing traversers everywhere. If she could tell Fang Hao about this, he would definitely intervene. It was just that she didn't even have time to open her lord's book right now. "I'll go back with you. Let my people leave. How about that?" Deng Bin spoke again. Since everyone would die if they kept resisting, it might be better for her to go with them so her subordinates could live. "Haha, no deal. We will take you back, and your people must also die. This is the king's command," the leading dwarf continued. "Damn it, fight them." Deng Bin gritted her teeth and roared. The rest of the people behind her also raised their weapons and charged towards the enemy. The dwarves didn't want to waste any more words with them either. They raised their guns and pulled the triggers. Bang, bang, bang. With each shot, several more humans fell to the ground, lifeless. Unless they were high-tier units, a weapon like a rifle was simply a harvesting machine. Rustle, clatter, clatter. Just then, from the dense woods on both sides of the two groups, a rustling sound suddenly came, followed by a sound like bones colliding. It was as if some strange monsters were rapidly approaching, just as both sides were wary of the flanks. Suddenly, they saw a human woman, wearing battle armor and holding a bright silver spear. The tip of her spear pointed diagonally downwards, and she charged forward through the grass with furious eyes. The dwarves were slightly stunned. A human woman? Was she coming to walk into their trap? As soon as their thoughts arose, their expressions suddenly changed again. The bushes all around rustled again, followed by large numbers of undead pouring out from all directions, charging directly towards them. The dwarf cavalry's faces changed drastically. They couldn't understand why there were so many undead in this patch of woods. Whoosh. There was no time to think. The human woman had already charged close, the bright silver spear in her hand pointing diagonally upwards, aimed directly at the gap in the leading dwarf captain's helmet. This single thrust was enough to show the woman's skill. It was fast and fierce, the spear thrusting forward, yet very steady. The dwarf captain was startled and tilted his head. Clang! The spear tip struck the helmet's faceplate, sending out a shower of sparks. The force of the spear thrust nearly made him fall off the deer's back. With one successful strike, the two quickly separated. The other dwarves glared fiercely at the woman, but they didn't have time for revenge. Undead were constantly pouring out from all sides. Bang, bang, bang. The bolt-action rifles fired nonstop, shooting at the approaching undead. But the effect wasn't as effective as they had imagined. The skeleton undead quickly charged close. The dwarf cavalry immediately put down their rifles, drew their sabers, and began to fight fiercely with the skeletons. Clang, clang, clang. Intense sounds of fighting erupted violently all around. The dwarves swung the battle blades in their hands, hacking at the charging skeletons. It was just that there were too many skeletons. They seemed endless, no matter how many were killed. The woman held her spear pointing diagonally downwards and said coldly, "Kill the dwarves, don't harm those giant deer." The skeletons immediately changed their attack methods. They dragged the dwarves off the backs of the deer. They surrounded them in several layers and hacked them to death with their swords, less than 50 meters from the battlefield. Dang Bin and the others watched everything happening before them in horror. Originally, they all thought they were going to die. They had also planned to take a few more dwarves with them as a cushion before they died. But unexpectedly, just as they were about to fight to the death, a heroic woman, like an ancient female knight-errant, charged out with a spear. Following closely behind were large numbers of undead. They rushed out of the forest from all directions, swarming towards the dwarves. What's going on? Is this woman human or not? How can she command skeletons? In this vicinity, one always encounters undead creatures, rotting corpses, skeletons, and even wandering spirits. But these undead creatures all share one characteristic. They cannot be communicated with and are in an endless struggle with living beings. Once encountered, don't have any second thoughts, just start fighting. But today, the scene before her had overturned her previous understanding. Undead can be controlled? Lord, while they're fighting, let's retreat quickly. Zackley whispered, clutching his waist wound. Yes, run now while you can. Lord, let's escape quickly. The other militiamen also said. Gulu gulu. As they spoke, a skull rolled to their feet. Its constantly opening and closing jaw seemed to be saying something to them. In an instant, everyone shut their mouths. They looked at the skull at their feet with terrified expressions. Whoosh la la, a headless skeleton quickly ran over, and as everyone retreated in panic, it picked up the skull and placed it directly on its neck. Then, without even looking at them, it continued to charge at the dwarves. It seemed these undead really had no hostility towards them. Lord, there's still a chance to run now. The skeleton left, and Zackley spoke again. Dang Bin, however, stared intently ahead, seemingly caught in a dilemma. Should she leave now in the chaos, or wait until it ended and talk to the woman with the spear? She kept analyzing the pros and cons in her mind, finally gritting her teeth and saying, they don't mean us harm. As long as we don't do anything foolish, just stand here and don't move. Lord, this isn't. Whoosh la la. Another skeleton hopped over, picked up a thigh bone from its right side, and left. This isn't safe. Dingbin took a deep breath. Listen to me. If we run, this winter won't be easy either. Winter is coming. The city is gone, and there are no supplies. It would indeed be difficult to survive. There was no better option. They could only listen to their lord. Everyone nodded and began to watch the battlefield while bandaging the wounded. From time to time, bone frames would fly over. Some were picked up by skeletons, while others remained where they fell. Swoosh! The spear moved in a straight line, as swift as lightning. With an unstoppable momentum, it thrust towards the iron helmet's eye again. The dwarf captain had been watching the human woman in front of him. Seeing the long spear thrusting, he immediately swung his battle axe to block it. Clang! A sound like hammering iron rang out. The two clashed fiercely, then quickly pulled apart. The dwarf captain questioned coldly, "Why are you interfering in our affairs? Are you trying to start a war with Boffing Mountain?" Dong Jiayue's right hand tightly gripped the long spear, trembling continuously. The clash just now felt like her tiger's mouth was almost torn open. She was inwardly surprised by the dwarf captain's strength. But on her face, she still sneered, "Boffing Mountain? Heh, I don't care if it's Boffing or Jiofing. You're hunting us humans, and that's not allowed." "Humph, you're seeking death," the dwarf captain roared. He flicked the reins in his hand, and the giant deer beneath him immediately charged towards Dong Jiayue. By now, he had also seen the situation clearly. With the number of skeletons around, his side had no chance of winning. The only chance was to kill this woman in front of him. These skeletons probably listened to her command. If she died, things would be easy. Seeing the dwarf captain charge on his deer, Dong Jiayue's fighting spirit also rose. This grandma will teach you a lesson today. A cold glint arrived first. Then, spearlight shot out like a net of nails. Dong Jiayue's footwork was steady, and her long spear continuously thrust out, aiming directly at the enemy's eyes, jaw, and other gaps in the armor. The fierce offensive instantly pushed back the charging dwarf, who controlled his giant deer to block and retreat simultaneously. The dry branches and fallen leaves beneath their feet crunched under the giant deer's hooves. He was forcibly pushed back to his original position. The dwarf captain was secretly alarmed. In terms of strength and ability, he was definitely much stronger than this woman. But her spear technique was too sharp, taking advantage of its length to specifically target his vital points. Instead, he was being suppressed. Looking at the dwarves dying one by one at the hands of the skeletons, he knew they would all die if he dragged this on. A look of determination and ruthlessness flashed in his eyes. He ignored the incoming spear light, relying on his armor to block it. His large saber chopped and hacked fiercely, with an air of intending to perish together. Dong Jieyue retracted her spear technique and began to maneuver with skill against her opponent. Unbeknownst to him, the dwarf captain's armor was already covered in dents. His inability to kill Dong Jieyue made the dwarf captain increasingly anxious. Seeing that he couldn't kill the enemy while riding the deer, the dwarf bent his knees slightly, stepping forcefully on the stirrups. The giant deer's body lowered under the weight, and the dwarf's body was already airborne. His large saber traced a half-crescent moon, swinging downwards. Dong Jieyue frowned. Her strength was already inferior to the dwarf's. Now, with his full-force chop, she immediately pulled back and retreated. Whoosh! The saber chopped through empty air, sending rolling gusts of wind and rustling the grass and trees. His attack fruitless, the dwarf charged again. Dong Jieyue seemed unwilling to entangle with him, turning and fleeing towards the skeleton area. The dwarf saw his enemy lose courage and quickened his pace. Die, you dog! The dwarf captain roared loudly, his hand already accumulating power, and he chopped his saber towards the woman's back. Dong Jieyue tilted her head slightly, looking at the shouting enemy. She calculated the distance between them. Now, a cold glint flashed in her eyes. The long spear in her hand coiled around her waist, accumulating power. The spear's shaft rotated once, and swoosh. A strong gust of wind howled, arriving from behind but reaching first. Uft. The sound of flesh being pierced rang out. The spear tip, with unstoppable momentum, penetrated the dwarf captain's mouth. He hung on the spear tip. Blood flowed down the long spear. Woo-woo. The dwarf captain tried to say something, but no sound came out. The great saber he held high slowly fell to the ground, and he gradually lost his breath. Retreat. Charge out with me. Quick, retreat with me. The death of the dwarf captain extinguished the fighting spirit of the remaining dwarves. They charged outwards recklessly. One giant antlered deer after another leaped high, using their heads to knock over the skeletons in front, attempting to break through directly. But the number of undead was too great. They wouldn't let them leave so easily. They were tightly entangled. Then they were dragged off the deer's backs by skeletons and hacked to death with a flurry of swords. All right, tie up these giant deer's legs. Don't kill them. I want to study them when I get back. Dong Jieyue shook her long spear and ordered the skeletons. The skeletons immediately tackled the giant antlered deer and then roughly bound their forehooves with ropes. While they were tying up the giant deer, Dong Jieyue walked towards the few humans who had been watching the show. One of the very disheveled women was clearly a transmigrator. All right, you don't need to be nervous. My name is Dong Jieyue. What do I call you, beautiful? Dong Jieyue asked directly. Dengbin had always had a crew cut and still had short hair now. Her bare arms were covered in tattoos. This beautiful was something she hadn't heard anyone call her in quite some time. Cough. My name is Dengbin. Thank you, Miss Dong, for saving us. Dengbin forced a smile. Dong Jieyue glanced at the situation of the group. She said softly, "What's next? If you're going back to your territory, I can escort you for a while." Dengbin's eyes were filled with dejection. My territory is gone, and I can't go back now. If possible, could my people rest at your place? I've given all my supplies to my friend. We won't stay for free. Oh, that's nothing. Since you have nowhere to go, come to my place first. You can also tell me about the dwarves. After all this time, it's my first time meeting the natives. Dong Jiayue was quite straightforward. Thank you, Miss Dong. At this moment, Dong Jiayue's human soldiers approached, pushing a flatbed cart full of goods. Dong Jiayue ordered, take the dwarf equipment and these giant deer back. Bury the bodies nearby and try to cover up the traces. Yes, Lord. Everyone began to move, dealing with the bodies as ordered. Soon, the scene was cleaned up. Everyone began to return to the territory, on the official road leading to Silverwing City. Inside the carriage, the maid stared at the chessboard, contemplating her next move to win the game. Across from her, Rebecca sat at the table, her heavy chest resting on the table for support, her hand constantly fiddling with a jade pendant. As her fingertips rubbed the pendant, she could clearly feel the carved pattern on it. She murmured softly, "Little pervert, you really thought I was easy to bully." Although her murmuring was quiet, it was quite clear in the carriage. The maid immediately looked up. "Madam, what did you say? What ghost?" Rebecca's expression remained unchanged. She said, "I said, how much longer are you going to stare?" "Oh, all right." The maid took another look before placing a piece. As this piece landed, Rebecca revealed a smile. Then, her fair fingers picked up a white piece and gently placed it down. The maid's eyes instantly widened. 1, 2, 3, 5. Ah, I clearly looked carefully. What happened? The maid cried out in despair. This 5-in-a-row game was something Fang Hao had recently taught in Jia and Loli to keep them from running around. They could play it by finding dark and light-colored pebbles by the river and drawing a chessboard. Moreover, the rules were very simple. Whether horizontally, vertically, or diagonally, as long as 5 pieces were connected, it counted as a win. The two quickly learned it and became very enthusiastic about the game. However, to Fang Hao's surprise, this seemingly unchallenging game suddenly became popular. Not only did Jia and Loli play, but even the soldiers and mercenaries would play around during their breaks, especially when camping. Originally, when camping, different areas would be noisy with eating, drinking, and bragging, like a bustling market. Now it was all chess players and spectators. Terrifyingly quiet. Now Rebecca also started playing. Sitting in the carriage was indeed boring, so it was a good game to pass the time. She saw the maid's face full of disbelief, even a little unwilling to play, yet not daring to get angry. Rebecca smiled. With your skill, you can only play with Jia for a while. The maid had served Rebecca for many years and was a trusted confidant. She pouted and mumbled softly. Yes, yes, Madam is the best. Only the city lord can make you serious." At the mention of Fang Hao, Rebecca's heart skipped a beat and her eyes began to wander. After being forcibly kissed twice, she had been having strange dreams recently during her rest. His figure was always there, always doing strange things. Now she wasn't sure if it was her reaction to intimacy with a man or if she had truly fallen for him. "Don't mention him, he's annoying." The maid smiled slightly. She knew Rebecca best and naturally understood that the annoying she spoke of wasn't truly annoying. She chuckled softly. "The city lord is young, handsome, and powerful. He knows how to care for people, which is much better than those old noble geezers. Madam, what are you dissatisfied with?" The maid was well aware of the nobles who had openly and secretly pursued Rebecca in the past, but there really hadn't been anyone as young, handsome, and good-tempered as Fang Hao. "Go? Is this your place to speak?" Rebecca's face stiffened as she lightly reprimanded. The maid's smile immediately vanished. "Yes, madam, I was wrong." Rebecca said nothing more, merely propping her chin and looking out the window. Seeing her expression, the maid spoke again. "Madam, if you're bored, why don't you let the city lord come up and sit with you? Even just chatting would be good." Rebecca, blushing with anger, grabbed the maid's hand and slapped it twice forcefully. "Still mentioning him? What would I want him to come for? I'm not looking for trouble, letting him come chat with me." The maid's palm was hit, but she wasn't angry. She smiled and changed her approach. "This 5-in-a-row is too difficult for me. Madam, you're too good. How about I find someone of similar skill to play with you, so you won't be bored on the journey?" "All right, go then." The maid had the carriage slow down a bit, then got off directly. Not long after, the carriage door opened again. A man in brocade robes bent down and squeezed in. The maid, however, did not follow him in. After giving instructions to the surrounding guards, she got into the carriage behind. After Fang Hao entered, he immediately sat on the soft couch beside Rebecca. What are you doing? Why are you sitting here? Rebecca shrank to one side. Fang Hao said without batting an eyelid. Madam, aren't you looking for me to play chess? To play chess, you sit opposite. Who says you have to sit opposite to play chess? Fang Hao said shamelessly. Rebecca really had no way to deal with this thick-skinned fellow. She glared at him. Then you sit here, I'll sit opposite. Saying that, she was about to go around the wooden table in front of her to sit on the opposite side. How could Fang Hao let go of this opportunity? He grabbed her wrist and gently pulled. Rebecca was pulled back, and with the carriage already unstable, her body stumbled, and she sat directly into Fang Hao's arms. A soft sensation landed on his lap. Ah! She cried out, but immediately closed her mouth, carefully listening to the outside, fearing that the commotion inside would be heard by the surrounding guards. Fang Hao also said nothing. What are you doing? Rebecca asked angrily. Fang Hao, however, smiled. Nothing, I just don't want to let you go. Are you crazy? She said, about to get up. How could Fang Hao let her go? He wrapped one arm around her waist, preventing her from rising. He whispered, Don't rush, let's play chess and chat. Rebecca's face was flushed red. She wanted to struggle, but her strength was no match for his. She pushed a few times, but couldn't break free. Fang Hao, on the other hand, thoroughly enjoyed the feeling of Rebecca struggling in his arms. Seeing that she couldn't escape, Rebecca had no choice but to sit obediently in his arms. Blushing, she said softly, No funny business, or I'll never speak to you again. Okay, we'll just play chess and chat. Saying that, he picked up a chess piece and placed it in the middle of the board. Rebecca saw that she had no other option, so she just stayed there. He didn't feel tired, and she had a cushion to sit on, which saved her from the bumpy carriage. What was she afraid of? She glanced at the chessboard and then placed a piece. Their skill levels were indeed similar. Both had to carefully observe the board before cautiously making a move. After making another move, Rebecca softly spoke, We'll arrive in Silverwing City in a few days. The open and secret struggles between the powerful are the most troublesome. When we get there, listen to me. Tell me about any invitations you receive. If you can avoid going, don't go, so you don't bring trouble upon yourself. Understood, I really don't want to get involved in these things. Fang Hao placed a piece. Although he hadn't interacted with any nobles, he had seen infighting in TV dramas. He really didn't want to get involved in these things. It would be best to end this journey peacefully, and then he would return to his territory to hibernate. Speaking of the powerful, Rebecca seemed to have some worries. The blush and arrogance faded from her face, revealing a hint of fatigue, and she said softly, Alas, actually, my position as City Lord's wife isn't as glamorous as it appears. Recruiting soldiers in the city gets harder each year. The nobles all have their own agendas, and the Federation Council is still looking for reasons to force me out of this position. If the old City Lord were still here, there wouldn't be so many problems, and no one would dare to criticize his decisions. Fang Hao also knew a little about these matters. Although she was the power holder of Lisis City, everyone in the city had their own schemes. Even Aubrey, the kept man she supported, colluded with the faceless ones to try and kill her. It showed that it had reached a very difficult point to control. If Fang Hao hadn't appeared and quickly quelled the unrest in the city, Lisis City would probably have changed hands long ago. Rebecca's abilities were actually very good, but they were in management and planning. She wasn't skilled in the exchange of interests among the powerful. Sometimes, only by going along with the flow can one gain the approval of the powerful. Fang Hao thought for a moment and comforted her. You just need to focus on management and development. Leave the rest to me. When Lisis City stabilizes, I'll take you to see the other races in my territory. It's very interesting, especially the dwarves' mountain belly furnace. It's spectacular. Rebecca pursed her lips. She had never thought that one day she would have to rely on a man. But Fang Hao was simply too good. Entrusting anything to him meant she wouldn't have to worry, and she couldn't refuse that. Your territory has dwarfs too? Yes, didn't I tell you? There are also trolls and orcs. Rebecca said, grabbing the man's mischievous hand and holding it tightly. Don't mess around. We agreed. If you mess around again, I'm leaving. Fang Hao stopped his mischief, held her hand, interlaced their fingers, and placed them on her waist. What do trolls look like? Rebecca continued to ask. They're over 3 meters tall, covered in thick fur. That ugly? Not really. Among the troll race, those are considered handsome men. Handsome men covered in fur. With Rebecca's experience, she naturally knew all these things. But she was still very willing to listen to him tell her, occasionally showing an expression of admiration. The two chatted while playing chess. Clip-clop, clip-clop. Hoofbeats sounded outside the carriage. A scout approached the carriage and whispered, "City Lord, madam, there's a cool tea stall set up by villagers ahead. Commander Dimitrika plans to have the team rest at the cool tea stall." Cool tea stall? They had been traveling from morning until noon, and with the muggy weather, they indeed needed a break. A cool tea stall, is there any problem? Fang Hao asked. The scout swallowed, saying, the nearby area has been checked, and no abnormalities were found. This was already within Silverwing City's jurisdiction. Although still on the outskirts, it was clearly much safer. They hadn't encountered any more bandits blocking the road. Fang Hao glanced at Rebecca and saw her nod. So he said, "Proceed as Dimitrika instructed." "Yes, sir." The scout rejoiced and immediately relayed the order. Upon hearing they could rest at the cool tea stall, the team's pace quickened considerably. They quickly headed towards the cool tea stall. The cool tea stall was a simple shelter made of straw. In front of the stall were 3 people dressed as villagers, and inside the shelter behind them were large jars filled with cool tea. Watching the Lysis City team gradually approach from a distance, the 3 began to get nervous. The Lysis City army approached, began to surround the cool tea stall, and conducted a more thorough inspection. A city lord's mansion guard, holding 2 bowls of cool tea, quickly came to the carriage and said eagerly, "Sir, madam, this is cool tea, to help you cool off." The curtain was pulled open, and Fang Hao took the cool tea. But just as he was about to hand the cool tea to Rebecca, Fang Hao's expression froze. Ghost head gourd cool tea. Category: poisonous dish. Description: cool tea made from ghost head gourd. After consumption, combat ability gradually diminishes within 10 to 30 minutes. There's something wrong with this tea. Fang Hao's brow furrowed. He grabbed Rebecca's hand as she reached for the teacup. Rebecca was startled, thinking he was going to play a trick again. She pouted, "What are you doing?" Her tone wasn't one of blame, but rather a hint of coquetry. However, Fang Hao at this moment had no mind for such things. His brow remained furrowed. He said in a cold voice, "There's something wrong with this tea, don't drink it." Ghost head gourd. Fang Hao had seen someone selling ghost head gourds in the channel. They were roughly the size of a pumpkin, shaped exactly like a human head with distorted facial features. They looked quite unsettling. The characteristic of this gourd was that it was colorless and tasteless, containing a certain toxicity. After consumption, one would gradually feel weak all over after 10 minutes, eventually losing the ability to fight. Of course, this poison wasn't strong. For heroes or those with anti-poison attributes, the effect would be minimal. But for ordinary soldiers, it was more than enough. Earlier, transmigrata lords had been keen on buying these ghost head gourds for a long time. They would mix the gourd flesh into food for wild beasts to clear out beasts and monsters around their territory. He never expected that today, his group would become the targeted wild beasts. He looked again at the cold tea in his hand. Amidst the coolness, a faint fragrance emanated. Her hand was still held, and Rebecca's expression immediately turned serious. "What's wrong?" "This tea is mixed with ghost head gourd. Drinking it will make you lose your ability to move," Fang Hao said in a low voice. Rebecca's expression immediately became solemn. The incident with the life-takers was still fresh in her mind, and now it was happening again. What was wrong with this year? They kept encountering such things along the way. "Don't worry, it hasn't reached the worst point yet," Fang Hao continued. At the same time, he pulled open a crack in the window and looked outside. Everything at the cold tea stall seemed normal. Several simply dressed villagers, looking uneasy, were preparing cold tea for the soldiers. Although they dressed like villagers, their ranks were actually quite high. Human warrior, tier 8. Human archer, tier 6. Such high ranks would make them leaders among bandits. Here, within Silverwing City's domain, they should be mercenaries. At the tea stall, some soldiers had already started pouring out all the water from their canteens, intending to replace it with this cold tea. Fang Hao glanced around again. The roadsides were flat, with no ambush points. The ghost head gourd's poison was slow-acting and would take time to take effect. This should just be the place for poisoning. The attack would likely come later, once everyone in the team was affected by the poison. He lightly patted her round hip on his lap, signaling her to sit aside. Pulling open a gap in the curtain, he called Dimitrika and Asidi over. The two bent down to the car window, listening to Fang Hao's instructions. After he finished giving orders, the two nodded and separated again, heading to the front and back of the convoy, respectively. Immediately after, Dimitrika was seen leading soldiers to the tea stall, taking control of several villagers. The incident happened so suddenly that these people hadn't even reacted. They were directly pressed to the ground. Next, there was a clatter and clang as the tea stall was violently searched. Several weapons were found and thrown in front of the villagers. The villagers explained in low voices. Before long, Dimitrika returned. He said softly, "Lord, we've clarified it. They are mercenaries. Someone hired them to set up a stall here and sell tea to passers-by." "Who hired them? Did you find out?" Fang Hao continued to ask. "They said they don't know. They met the person while drinking in a tavern. They might be able to identify them if they see them." Fang Hao frowned, feeling that these guys weren't telling the truth. They didn't tell the truth, did they? It's hard to say, but from the looks of it, if they knew, they probably wouldn't hide it, Dimitrika continued. There was no way to detect lies in the team. Blackthorn could interrogate corpses, but he was still in the territory. "All right, give antidote potions to those who drank the tea, rest for a bit, then continue," Fang Hao ordered. Dimitrika nodded and softly asked, "Lord, should we still take these tea sellers with us?" "Kill them all, bury the bodies. If we take them, it'll be hard to explain if we encounter patrol guards." "Understood." Dimitrika left. Soon, cries for mercy came from not far away. Heads rolled, and bodies were dragged away, dug into pits, and buried. Next, the team took a short rest. Some who had already drunk the cold tea also took the antidote potion. The accompanying mercenaries held the potions, somewhat reluctant to drink them, even though they were given to them. But how much did a bowl of cold tea cost? This was a waste of a bottle of potion. There was nothing they could do. It was their own fault for being greedy. After a short rest, the team set off again. Before leaving, several large water tanks filled with cold tea were also smashed. To prevent further harm to others, the team continued towards Silverwing City. Due to the possibility of enemies ahead, more scouts were arranged to scout ahead. Fang Hao and Rebecca also stopped their intimate moments. They changed carriages to avoid being attacked. Perhaps the enemy saw that the ghost head gourd had no effect, as no enemies appeared until they reached a village to set up camp. After allocating rooms, Fang Hao returned from outside and, upon entering the room, saw Jia and Loli playing Go Bang at the table. "Oh, no, I made a mistake on this move," Loli said, about to take back the piece she had just placed. And Jia didn't understand why the other party was taking back a move. But she understood that she seemed to be winning. She immediately said, "No." Fang Hao said that once a piece is placed, there's no regretting it. "Why are you taking it back? When you took it back during the day, why didn't you say that?" "No, I made a mistake on this move." Loli clutched the chess piece tightly in her hand. "No. I don't care. I made a mistake. I'm redoing this move." The two began to fight over the chess piece in Loli's hand. Whoosh. The chessboard was knocked over, and the original game instantly became a mess. The two froze, looking at the scattered pieces, stuck in place. "See? It's all messed up. Otherwise, I would have definitely won this game. I had a better chance of winning, all right." The two then tacitly separated, retrieved their pieces, and started a new game, completely ignoring Fang Hao who had entered the room. Fang Hao glanced at the two and then went directly into the bedroom. It was good that they were playing chess here. It saved him the worry of them running around and causing trouble. He lay on the bed, waiting for dinner. Ding! Ding! The Lord's book chimed twice in quick succession. Fang Hao sat up and opened it. Dong Jiayue and Deng Bin had both sent him private messages. He opened Dong Jiayue's message to read it. Brother Hao, are you there? I just received news that the dwarves of Boffing Mountain are constantly attacking transmigrated cities and capturing transmigrators. Seeing this message, Fang Hao instantly became much more alert. These past 2 days, he had seen people mention dwarf attacks on transmigrated cities in the channel. At the time, he had suspected it might be Boffing Mountain. Now, it was directly confirmed by Dong Jiayue. Fang Hao immediately replied, "How is it? Are you in any danger?" After sending it, Fang Hao switched to the second private message. It was from Deng Bin. Deng Bin, Master Fang Hao, I'm sorry. I was being hunted by dwarves the past 2 days and am only safe now. I'll leave the items with you for now. Hunted by dwarves? Why did both of them mention dwarves? Such a coincidence. Fang Hao frowned and replied, "It's good that you're safe. Where are you now? Are you safe?" Immediately after, came their replies, one after another. Dong Jiayue, I rescued a transmigrator, and this is the news I got from her. Deng Bin, I'm relatively safe, in a transmigrator's territory. She's still some distance from the dwarves. Holy crap. Fang Hao repeatedly switched between the two messages. No matter how he looked at it, they were talking about each other. Fang Hao thought for a moment and replied to each of them separately. The one you saved is Deng Bin. Are you in Dong Jiayue's territory? In Dong Jiayue's territory. Inside the Lord's hall. The two women looked at their Lord's book, then suddenly looked up, staring at each other in surprise. You know Brother Hao? You know Master Fang Hao? They spoke simultaneously, then both paused in surprise. What a coincidence! Suddenly, Deng Bin remembered that when she first transmigrated, many people in the channel were provoking Fang Hao. There was a girl who repeatedly defended Fang Hao in the channel, even arguing with others. Her name seemed to be Dong something. So, it must be the person in front of her. Ha ha, I didn't expect such a coincidence, Sister Deng. You already knew Brother Hao. Dong Jiayue also smiled at this point. In the early days of transmigration, Fang Hao had helped Dong Jiayue many times. She did have some abilities. But without Fang Hao's help, it would have been difficult for her to survive until now. Therefore, she trusted Fang Hao greatly. Knowing that Deng Bin was familiar with Fang Hao, their relationship would be even closer. A single. Deng Bin also smiled. So it's Miss Dong. I was wondering why that name sounded so familiar. It turns out Master Fang Hao often mentioned it. Oh, is that so? He always mentioned me. Dong Jiayue's expression brightened. Occasionally, we only spoke a few words when trading linen. Deng Bin glanced at Dong Jiayue and said softly. Dong Jiayue's smile grew even wider, and she looked at the Lord's book again. She said, Sister Deng, please stay here for now. Brother Hao has already told me to gather troops to attack Boffing Mountain, and then we will reclaim your territory. Just now, she had discussed the situation here with Fang Hao again. And with the speed of the dwarf attacks, it was likely they would reach here before winter. Instead of passively enduring, it was better to prepare in advance and catch the enemy off guard. Therefore, Fang Hao told Dong Jiayue to prepare for an active war, and the sooner, the better. Ideally, while the dwarves were divided and attacking various transmigrator locations, the undead army would directly charge in. Attack? The dwarves have a large number of cannons and rifles. These. Deng Bin's expression became much more solemn. She had personally experienced battles with the dwarves. With over 3,000 people, even in the channel, she was considered a well-developed lord. But facing dwarf machinery, she was as powerless as a baby against a boxing champion. Under cannonballs and bullets, her people were so fragile. Even heroes, eagerly anticipated by the lords, probably couldn't withstand the power of cannons. Haha, it's fine, Sister Deng, you don't need to worry about this. Just stay here and rest to recover. I will notify you when it's time to depart. Dealing with these dwarves is no problem, Dong Jiayue said with a relaxed expression. Seeing her so confident, Dangbin found it hard to say anything. She could only nod. All right, they have several types of cannons, so we still need to be careful. Okay, someone, take Sister Deng to rest, Dong Jiayue said softly. A servant came in from the side, leading Dangbin out. After Dangbin left, Dong Jiayue continued to chat with Fang Hao through the Lord's book for a while. Then, she said, "Please call Commander Blacksword over." "Yes, my lord." Before long, accompanied by the sound of armor rubbing, a skeleton hero, clad in metal armor and with a dark iron sword hanging at his waist, walked in. "Miss Dong, you called for me." Black Sword and Heavy Arrow, who was stationed here, were originally Fang Hao's heroes. Although they were helping Dong Jiayue with defense, they were not in a subordinate relationship. Nor did they need to use honorifics like my lord. On the contrary, because Dong Jiayue herself relied on these heroes and skeleton soldiers, she had to be polite to them. "Commander Blacksword, dwarves are attacking various cities in the west, and the cannon fire will soon spread here. I spoke with Brother Hao, and he wants us to prepare to actively attack Boffing Mountain," Dong Jiayue said. Blacksword sat down beside her. "Understood. We will naturally act according to the Lord's command." "All right, Commander Blacksword, I still need you to accompany me to the Bloody Mountains to check on the situation of those dwarves." Dong Jiayue stood up and walked out. Blacksword nodded and followed behind. The two boarded the bone dragon outside the gate. The bone dragon soared into the sky, shooting up into the clouds. The whistling wind filled their ears, and through the clouds, they could see cities the size of matchboxes below, flying towards the Bloody Mountains. Bloody Mountains. Beijigang City. The bone dragon landed from the sky, stirring up a cloud of dust. The appearance of the bone dragon caused quite a commotion. Dwarf guards rushed over with weapons, shouting for those on the bone dragon to dismount quickly. But they also knew this must be the Lord's subordinate, as the bone dragon had not attacked them. Dong Jiayue and Black Sword leaped from the bone dragon's back. Her gaze swept over the dwarves holding hand crossbows and old-fashioned fire guns. She softly asked, "Where is Balurga?" The leading guard waved away the surrounding dust and asked in a deep voice, "Who are you?" His tone was not very friendly. Dong Jiayue's delicate brows furrowed, and she spoke without ceremony. "I bring Master Fang Hao's latest orders. Tell Balurga to come see me." This. Since Fang Hao was brought up, the dwarves naturally dared not obstruct. The dwarf captain immediately said, "Go call Lord Balurga over." A dwarf scurried towards the great smeltery outside the city. Before long, inside the city lord's mansion, decorated in an industrial style, Dong Jia met Balurga, who was shirtless, glistening with oil, and had a thick, gray-white beard. Balurga entered boisterously, frowning as he scanned the hall. His voice was rough. "Where's the Lord? Who said the Lord came?" Dong Jiayue stood up at this moment and said, "Mr. Balurga, long time no see. I am here on behalf of Master Fang Hao." Balurga looked at the human woman in front of him, then at the silent Black Sword beside her. He slapped his forehead, suddenly realizing, "Oh, Miss Dong Jiayue, look at my head. It's full of blacksmithing. I almost didn't remember." Saying that, he sat down beside her, his gaze on Dong Jiayue. "Miss Dong, just tell me what's happening. I don't have time to waste here." Dong Jiayue wasn't angry. She directly said, "Master Fang Hao is preparing to go to war with Boffing Mountain. I wonder if you're interested in this matter. If not, please continue with your work. We won't disturb you." "Going to war with Boffing Mountain?" Balurga's brows immediately furrowed into a knot, his eyes filled with astonishment.